Tonight we enter a building that has slept beneath the southern Iraqi sands for more than 4,000 years. In 2025, archaeologists working with the British Museum and the Iraqi State Board of Antiquities and Heritage announced an extraordinary discovery at ancient Girsu, inside a large mud brick building, divided into quiet working rooms. They uncovered more than 200 clay tablets and dozens of seal impressions. Sebastian Ray, director of the Girsu project, described them as the practical records of one of humanity's earliest empires. Not legends, not treasure maps, records of fish, flour, barley, textiles, animals, precious metals, workers, officials, and deliveries. And yet, sometimes, the most ordinary documents open the strangest doors. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the night settles around you, perhaps you might share where you're listening from and what local time it is there. There is something pleasing about imagining distant rooms, quiet lamps, and many listeners entering the same ancient silence together. You stand now upon a low, weathered rise in the open plain. The modern name is Tello, but beneath your feet lies Girsu, once a sacred city of ancient Sumer. The sun has gone down, leaving the soil cool against your sandals. A dry wind brushes the surface of the mound, carrying the faint smell of dust and reeds. Nothing moves except a loose thread of sand sliding along a broken wall. It does not look like the entrance to a mystery. There are no gleaming doors here, no marble staircases plunging beneath the earth. There are only baked clods of earth, pale fragments of pottery, and the remains of rooms whose roofs collapsed thousands of years ago. Yet within those rooms, people once recorded the movement of an entire world. They pressed sharpened reeds into damp clay, carefully marking what entered the storehouse, what left the temple, and whose hands had received it. Records confirm that Girsu was not a forgotten village hiding at civilization's edge. It was one of the important cities of southern Mesopotamia, devoted to its powerful patron god. Its temples, workshops, canals, fields, and our officials formed part of a landscape where divine worship and administration were woven tightly together. To manage grain was not simply to manage food. To count sheep was not merely to count animals. The city itself was understood to belong to the divine order. That small idea changes everything. Imagine entering one of the excavated rooms shortly after the tablets were discovered. The walls are low, their surfaces softened by age, their corners filled with powdery soil. A conservator lifts a clay tablet that appears, at first, to be a simple brown lump. A little cleaning reveals lines of tiny wedge-shaped marks. The tablet has been waiting through the rise and fall of kingdoms, through storms, invasions, looting, rebuilding, and long seasons when no human voice spoke its name. Then, under careful hands, it begins speaking again. One tablet lists commodities, another names workers, others preserve expenditures, animals, metals, and quantities of beer. The great machinery of administration emerges quietly, item by item. There is a gentle absurdity in it, rather comforting in a sleepy way. Even 4,000 years ago, somewhere in a warm office, someone was expected to explain where the barley had gone. Still, the scribes of Girsu were recording more than supplies. They were preserving a society built upon the belief that the gods owned the cities, received their offerings, directed their rulers, and guarded the principles by which life remained orderly. The tablet rooms belonged to a human administration, certainly, yet the administration served temples, sacred estates, and a world crowded with divine authority. This is where your question begins to deepen. A state archive can be excavated, its tablets can be cleaned, sorted, photographed, and translated. A storeroom can be measured, a doorway can be traced through damaged walls. But what happens when those same people describe knowledge as something originally possessed by the gods? What happens when writing is linked with sacred power? when wisdom is imagined as guarded, bestowed, transferred, or withheld. The phrase forbidden library does not appear neatly upon a tablet, waiting for modern readers to discover it. The ancient evidence is subtler than that, much subtler, and therefore more compelling. Across the literature of Mesopotamia, knowledge does not simply belong to anyone patient enough to search for it. It has guardians, it has boundaries, it has proper recipients. Sometimes it comes down from the divine world through ritual, kingship, craft, or writing itself. Perhaps a library need not be a room. Perhaps, for the people of Girsu, the library of the gods was an arrangement of powers, decisions, sacred instructions, and remembered designs. Perhaps every clay record made by human hands was only a modest earthly shadow of a greater order believed to exist beyond sight. The archive beneath your feet records flour, livestock, and silver. Yet behind those measured objects stands a far larger assumption. The world can be counted because the world has already been arranged. Scholars continue to debate how literally ancient communities understood such divine possession. Did officials sincerely believe every field and storeroom belonged to a god? Was sacred language partly a practical system for organizing wealth and authority? Or did those ideas remain inseparable in minds that saw no clean boundary between government and worship? The clay does not answer in a single voice. It gives you fragments, each honest in its own narrow way. There is also a quieter rumour that often follows ancient archives. Visitors, collectors, and imaginative writers have long wondered whether excavated tablet rooms are merely the visible portion of some greater hidden collection. In modern retellings, buried chambers become vaults of forbidden teachings, concealed maps, or instructions left by beings older than humankind. No excavation at Girsu has uncovered such a secret chamber. The strange detail is not that the rumour is proven. The strange detail is how naturally the rumour grows from the ancient worldview itself. For these were people who did believe that knowledge had sacred origins. You remain beside the mud brick wall as the night becomes cooler. Somewhere beyond the mound, reeds tremble beside water channels whose ancient predecessors fed this city. Above you, the sky looks almost unnaturally clear, deep and crowded with stars. It is easy to understand why a scribe might feel that meaning descended from somewhere higher, older, and less forgiving than the human mind. Inside the archive, a tablet once rested upon a shelf, or perhaps within a basket. A clerk had finished his task, a seal had been pressed, a delivery had been acknowledged. The document was set down among many others, with no thought that distant strangers would someday lean over it in wonder. Yet you do wonder, because the tablets reveal a civilization that treated writing as more than convenience. They reveal people carefully managing a city believed to stand beneath divine ownership. They reveal rooms where knowledge was stored, protected, and repeatedly consulted. And through the patient silence of ordinary records, they bring you close to an unsettling possibility. The first library you find is human. The library they feared, honoured, and longed to understand may have been something else entirely. The wind passes again across the broken walls. Dust gathers in the shallow marks left by excavation tools. Beneath a darkening sky, the ancient archive seems almost to settle back into sleep, protecting its little lists of animals, grain, workers, and offerings. But the door is open slightly, and in the silence behind those practical clay tablets, you begin to sense the outline of a much older question. Who first possessed the knowledge by which civilization was built? Your fingers meet clay first. It is cool, damp, and surprisingly yielding, gathered from the river country where water brings both harvest and trouble. In the lowlands of ancient Sumer, mud is everywhere. It shapes walls, ovens, storage bins, courtyards, drains, and children's toys. Under a patient hand, the same humble substance becomes memory. A handful of earth can hold a sheep count, a prayer, a lawsuit, a lullaby, or the name of a king. You sit within a narrow room while morning light enters through a high opening. The air smells of wet clay, straw matting, and faint cooking smoke from a courtyard nearby. Against one wall, shallow baskets contain prepared lumps of fine mud. Beside them rest cut reeds, each simple, light, and sharpened for a precise purpose. A scribe takes one reed between thumb and finger. There is no scratching sound, as with ink against paper. Instead, you hear small, soft pressures, a quiet push, a turn of the wrist, another push. The reed tip enters the surface and leaves a clean wedge. Several wedges gather into a sign. Several signs gather into a line. The clay receives each movement without protest, holding the pressure of a living hand as clearly as soft wax captures a seal. The British Museum explains that cuneiform writing was created by pressing a cut reed into slightly moist clay. Oxford scholars describe this writing tradition as one of the oldest literate cultures known. Lasting across more than 3,000 years, it travels through cities, kingdoms, temples, workshops, and royal courts. Yet its earliest beauty remains astonishingly plain. A river reed touches mud, and thought becomes durable. The tablet in your palm is no grand monument. It is small enough to hold easily, perhaps the size of a folded cloth. Its edges remain rounded from shaping. A faint thumbprint marks one corner, preserved without ceremony. You may be holding the nearest thing history offers to a handshake from a vanished clerk. The scribe turns the tablet carefully, adjusting its angle as the lines fill. Space matters. Clay has limits. A thought too long must continue on another surface, or squeeze itself into smaller signs. Mistakes can sometimes be smoothed away while the material remains damp. Once the tablet dries, hesitation becomes much harder to hide. Ancient paperwork, it seems, could be almost as unforgiving as modern paperwork, only considerably heavier. Around you, the room breathes with modest activity. Someone kneads clay with both hands, removing stones and coarse fragments. Someone trims reeds with a small blade. A boy carries fresh tablets on a flat board, stepping carefully because one clumsy stumble might erase an afternoon of calculations. Outside, waterbirds cry above a canal. The sound reaches the room softly, mingling with the steady tapping of reeds. Writing here is not detached from the earth. It comes from river silt, plant stem, water, sunlight, and human muscle. The signs may speak of gods, rations, fields, or offerings. Yet every message begins as mud under fingernails. Perhaps this is why the tablets seem so intimate. They do not float above ordinary life. They are made from the same ground where workers walk, crops grow, and temples rise. Some tablets are left to dry naturally. Others meet greater heat, whether deliberately or through catastrophe. There is an odd, almost mischievous truth hidden in this process. A wooden shelf burns. A building collapses, roof beams fall in flame. To the people watching, a collection may appear destroyed forever, yet intense fire can harden clay, preserving the words more stubbornly than peaceful storage ever would. Destruction sometimes becomes librarian. This curious survival has encouraged a fringe idea among imaginative readers. They wonder whether lost tablet collections might remain sealed in baked ruins, protected by the very fires that ended their cities. Archaeologists would never accept a hidden archive merely because a hopeful story asks for one. Still, the thought has a strange tenderness. A room is swallowed by heat and dust, while its smallest voices quietly endure. You lift an unfinished tablet from a work surface. It carries only a few signs, perhaps abandoned when the clay proved flawed. The marks resemble tiny bird tracks crossing a muddy bank. Without training, they are silent geometry. To an experienced reader, each wedge changes meaning according to position, arrangement, and context. A mark can be a sound, a word, an idea, or part of a name. The surface is compact, but the mental world needed to read it is enormous. This is not a skill gained casually. The hand must learn pressure, the eye must learn order, the memory must store hundreds of signs, forms, words, and conventions. A young learner copies models repeatedly, filling small tablets with lines whose meaning may matter less, at first, than accuracy itself. The lesson enters the fingers slowly. A reed held poorly produces an ugly sign. A sign placed carelessly can transform sense into confusion. Scholars continue to discuss exactly where and how early scribes received their training. Some learning certainly occurred within households connected to administration. Other instruction may have been tied closely to institutions serving temples and palaces. Literary descriptions of school life are vivid, yet they can be exaggerated, polished, or playful rather than simple eyewitness accounts. The debate remains gentle but important. A written culture is never only about texts, it is also about who gains the right to make them. That right changes a person's position in the world. A farmer knows the soil through seasons and labour. A brewer knows grain through smell, foam, and taste. A shepherd knows animals through movement and temperament. The scribe knows another kind of landscape. He knows how goods become entries, how a promise becomes evidence, how a spoken command becomes something that survives the speaker. You can feel the weight of that power in a society where most people do not read these signs. The person who does becomes more than a clerk. He stands close to authority, memory, ownership, and sacred obligation. His tablet may determine whether grain has been delivered properly, whether workers have received rations, whether offerings have reached a sanctuary, or whether a disputed claim can be upheld. A clay tablet is therefore never simply clay. It is a witness. It is a boundary. It is a small, silent authority resting on a palm. The room grows warmer as daylight strengthens. Fresh tablets lie on boards, their surfaces still dark with moisture. Completed ones sit farther away, paling as they dry. Dust settles along the floor. A reed rolls gently against a basket and stops. No thunder announces the birth of writing here. No celestial flame rises from the courtyard. Only hands, water, earth, and patience. Yet a remarkable transformation unfolds within that quiet room. Breath passes away. Speech disappears into air. Faces vanish from households and streets. Buildings soften into ruin. But words pressed into clay remain close to the pressure that created them. They hold the small force of a thumb, the angle of a wrist, the discipline of a trained eye. You place the tablet down carefully. Its surface is fragile, yet its purpose feels almost defiant. Human beings have taken the yielding mud beneath their feet and persuaded it to resist forgetting. In the hush of the scribal room, among reeds and drying clay, written memory no longer seems ordinary. It seems like a power worth guarding. A scent of crushed barley hangs in the still air, warm and faintly sweet. You're standing near a sanctuary in the city of Erish, where fields stretch outward beneath a pale sky. Bundles of grain lie drying upon woven mats. Reeds grow along the water channels, bending gently whenever the breeze touches them. From grain and reed, from nourishment and writing, one goddess gathers her quiet authority. Her name is Nisaba. She is not presented as a warrior flashing weapons in sunlight. She does not thunder from a mountain or stride across a battlefield. Her power is calmer and perhaps more unsettling for that reason. She watches over grain, counting, measuring, surveying, writing, and the disciplined intelligence needed to hold a society together. To invoke her is to acknowledge that knowledge has an owner. In the ancient imagination, food and writing belong naturally together. Grain must be measured before it can be stored. Fields must be surveyed before their boundaries are trusted. Harvests must be counted before workers receive portions. Temples receive offerings, and cities endure the dry months. The reed that rises beside irrigation water becomes the instrument that records the crop nourished by that same water. Nothing is accidental here. The University of Oxford preserves ancient compositions in which Nisaba appears as a radiant divine figure, honoured by scribes and associated with wisdom. The University of Pennsylvania records her as the Sumerian goddess of grain and writing, and as patron deity of Eresh. These are not modern decorations placed upon an empty name. They emerge from the tablets themselves, from hymns, god lists, royal inscriptions, and the habits of scribes who ended learned compositions with praise for her. You enter a small shrine courtyard where the ground feels smooth beneath your feet. A vessel of grain stands near the wall, its rim decorated with a simple pattern. Incense smoke rises in a narrow ribbon, carrying a scent of resin and dry herbs. A woman places an offering carefully before a divine image, while a scribe waits nearby with his tablet resting against one palm. For him, writing is not merely employment. Every line he presses into clay belongs to a craft watched by a goddess. Every figure entered correctly on his order. Every careless calculation threatens confusion in a world depending upon measures, boundaries, and seasons. To learn signs is to enter Nisaba's domain, where the mind must become steady, the hand obedient, and the memory strong enough to serve what is sacred. Imagine how this changes a classroom. A young student no longer copies signs only because an older teacher demands neatness. He's handling an art attributed to divine guardianship. The reed in his fingers has been drawn from the same landscape that feeds the city. The clay beneath his thumb has been prepared from fertile river soil. His work is humble, yet it approaches a power believed to stand above ordinary speech. Even mistakes acquire a spiritual discomfort. A crooked sign can be corrected while the clay is wet. A careless life is rather less convenient. A teacher may strike the desk, sigh heavily, or complain that a pupil's wedges resemble confused insects wandering across mud. Beneath the mild comedy rests a serious conviction. Written knowledge demands discipline because written knowledge participates in divine order. Records from the ancient world confirm that Nisaba's influence extends beyond literary beauty. Rulers appeal to wisdom connected with her. Scribes identify themselves through devotion to her. Administrative work, agricultural calculation, learned language, and sacred praise gather around her presence. Her authority is not trapped inside a single temple room. It travels wherever signs are arranged with purpose. This is an unusual kind of goddess. She does not simply guard secrets hidden from human beings. She governs the ability to record, classify, and understand. The danger is not that she keeps every answer locked away. The danger is that she decides who may approach the method by which answers can be formed. A closed door keeps you outside a chamber. A guarded writing system can keep you outside an entire world. Your ears catch the quiet movement of sandals behind you. A temple official crosses the courtyard, holding a tablet wrapped in cloth. It may contain offerings, land measurements, or an account of grain owed by dependent workers. Nothing about it appears mysterious, yet the official carries it with care, because a written statement can outlast a conversation and settle matters long after witnesses have died. Knowledge has weight. A tablet may determine ownership, it may prove obligation, it may support a ruler's claim, preserve a sacred hymn, or record an offering made in fear and gratitude. Within a city shaped by temples and fields, Nisaba's power touches almost every threshold. She is present where harvest becomes number, where number becomes obligation, and where obligation becomes enduring memory. Scholars continue to debate how her two great domains became joined. Some historians suggest that a goddess of grain naturally acquired writing through the practical needs of accounting and surveying. Others caution that ancient people may not have separated material provision from sacred intelligence so neatly. A field and a tablet may have belonged together from the beginning, because both required order imposed upon the uncertainty of life. The uncertainty is easy to feel. A harvest can fail. A canal can dry or flood. A boundary stone can be moved in darkness. A spoken agreement can be denied by mourning. In such a world, a goddess who governs measurement and writing is not ornamental. She offers stability against hunger, dispute, forgetfulness, and the quiet dishonesty that thrives whenever no record remains. There is a peculiar detail treasured by imaginative readers. Some ancient descriptions associate Nisaba with heavenly brilliance and precious blue stone, a material whose colour resembles a deep night sky. From this, fringe storytellers sometimes picture her as custodian of star-written knowledge, guarding a celestial archive unavailable to ordinary mortals. Archaeology does not reveal such a hidden chamber, yet the image remains haunting because the ancient poetry itself places writing close to heaven. You look upward as twilight spreads over the fields. The first stars appear above dark reeds and low roofs. Below them, a scribe draws measured wedges into a tablet, perhaps recording barley from a plot beside the canal. Above him, the heavens seem equally ordered, filled with bright marks arranged across darkness. It is easy to see the resemblance to the modern eye. Writing is a human invention, shaped by need, practice, experiment, and administration. To those who praised Nisaba, writing could be received as something sacred, a discipline connected with the very structure of existence. People may use it, kings may command it, teachers may pass it down, yet its deepest source remains beyond them. You pause near the sanctuary entrance while lamplight begins to flicker indoors. The sound of counting drifts from a nearby chamber, low and patient. Grain falls softly into a measuring vessel, each small seed striking another with a dry whisper. A reed presses into clay, leaving marks that will still be read when the offering bowl, the roof beams, and the measuring jar have vanished. Nisaba's presence is gentle, but never harmless. She suggests that civilization begins not simply when people build walls or gather harvests, but when they accept that knowledge must be ordered, it must be measured, it must be recorded, it must be entrusted to trained hands and placed beneath the protection of something greater than personal memory. In the deepening dusk, the goddess of grain and writing stands quietly at the threshold. She does not reveal every secret. She does something more powerful. She teaches human beings that secrets can be written down. Lamplight slides across a polished blue surface, deep as the sky just after sunset. You cannot yet tell whether it is stone, symbol, or dream. The colour seems almost too rich for an ordinary room built of clay and reeds. It gathers the light instead of surrendering it, holding within itself the cool darkness of distant hills and evening stars. Upon the knees of Nisaba rests a tablet. This image survives in a Sumerian hymn preserved through copies studied by scholars at the University of Oxford. The composition praises the goddess as Lady Bright like the stars, holding a tablet of lapis lazuli. Later, the hymn describes a house of learning opened for her, where the blue tablet is placed before her, so that she may consult a holy tablet of the heavenly stars. The words are careful, ceremonial, and strangely intimate. You are not shown a vast hall lined with thousands of clay documents. You are shown a seated goddess, a precious tablet, and an act of consultation. She does not invent the heavenly record in that moment. She reads from it, receives from it, or judges earthly order by what it contains. The scene is quiet, yet its implication reaches far beyond a single hymn. Even divine wisdom appears to have a source. You step into the imagined chamber with bare feet upon cool packed earth. The walls are washed pale, reflecting the tremble of oil lamps. A bowl of clean water stands near an incense burner. Fine smoke curls through the chamber, smelling of cedar resin and warm ash. At the far end, the goddess sits in stillness, her garment arranged in careful folds, her face unreadable in shadow. The tablet upon her knees glows softly. Lapis lazuli was no casual substance in Mesopotamia. It was precious, imported from distant mountain regions far beyond the river cities. Its blue colour suggested richness, remoteness, purity, and the shining depth of the heavens. Kings treasured it. Temples displayed it. Poets reached for its colour whenever ordinary clay, wool, or copper seemed unable to carry the weight of sacred brilliance. A clay tablet belongs to the workroom, a bluestone tablet belongs somewhere else. The distinction is gentle but powerful. Human scribes press river mud into service, shaping receipts, letters, exercises, contracts, and hymns. The tablet of Nisaba is imagined in a material no common clerk keeps stacked beside a basket of wet clay. It is not merely useful, it is set apart, elevated by colour, distance, expense, and the atmosphere of divine possession. Records preserved in the Oxford collection confirm that the hymn joins three ideas within a few lines: learning, a precious tablet, and heavenly order. These ideas do not prove that ancient Sumerians believed in a secret physical library concealed behind the sky. Poetry is not an inventory report, however much modern curiosity wishes it were. Yet the image does reveal something important. Knowledge worthy of a goddess is pictured as written knowledge, consulted from a sacred object. The heavens themselves become legible. Outside the chamber, night gathers over flat roofs and canals. Stars appear above the dark fields, bright points reflected in standing water. To a farmer, they may mark seasons and the passing hours. To a priest, they may reveal ceremonial timing and divine signs. To a poet praising Nisaba, they resemble markings upon a holy tablet, arranged with purpose by a wisdom that humans can approach only imperfectly. You hear the slow scrape of a wooden door turning against its post. A temple servant carries in a small offering of grain cakes and sets them down without speaking. The gesture seems almost modest beside the idea taking shape before you. What does one offer to the keeper of heavenly writing? Bread, perhaps, oil, sweet beer, the finest cloth available. Human beings have always been charmingly practical when facing the incomprehensible. The hymn does not call the tablet forbidden. It does something subtler. It places the object upon divine knees inside a sacred house of learning, beyond the ordinary reach of those who labour below. Its secrecy is created through distance and rank. A field worker may see stars, a merchant may handle silver, a trained scribe may copy hymns, but the goddess consults the heavenly tablet itself. The difference is enormous. A curious fringe reading has grown around this image. Some modern enthusiasts claim the blue tablet represents a lost celestial database, an ancient record of mathematics, astronomy, or technology received from beings descending from the stars. The surviving hymn does not say this. It speaks in sacred poetry, not mechanical instruction. Still, the modern fantasy attaches itself easily, because the original scene already imagines knowledge as something stored above humanity, then accessed by a divine guardian. Perhaps the attraction is understandable. You live surrounded by written records, glowing screens, locked files, and systems of knowledge too vast for one mind to hold. The idea of a master record, hidden somewhere beyond confusion, can feel oddly comforting. Perhaps all scattered facts belong together. Perhaps every season, boundary, birth, drought, and royal decision is already marked upon a single perfect tablet. Yet comfort and unease walk together, for a perfect record can also be a record of limits. If the heavens hold the pattern, human beings are not entirely free to shape their own meaning. They read imperfect copies. They follow portions of an order they did not compose. They may plead, calculate, sacrifice, build, and pray, while the full design remains on the knees of a being who does not owe them an explanation. Researchers continue to discuss how the heavenly tablet should be understood within Sumerian religious thought. Some see a poetic picture of learned wisdom, associated with star observation, surveying, and calculation. Others emphasize temple theology, where divine knowledge explains the stability of institutions and the rightful arrangement of society. The surviving lines allow both approaches, because ancient poetry often keeps practical skill and sacred mystery within the same breath. The chamber darkens as one lamp consumes its oil. Shadows extend along the wall, reaching toward the goddess as though the room itself wishes to read. You imagine the blue tablet tilted beneath her hands. No wedge marks are visible from where you stand. Perhaps they are too fine. Perhaps the light is too weak. Perhaps a human observer is never meant to read what she reads. Only the color reaches you, blue like distant stone carried across deserts and mountains. Blue like evening water lying still beside reed beds. Blue like the high darkness into which anxious eyes have always looked, searching for weather, direction, fate, warning, and reassurance. Within this sacred image, the library of the gods begins to acquire a shape. It need not possess doors, corridors, or guarded shelves. It may exist as a holy record of order itself, consulted by those divine powers entrusted with keeping the world intelligible. You remain at the threshold, listening to the faint hiss of the final lamp. The tablet rests silently in the blue darkness, close to the goddess, close to the stars, and painfully far from the waiting human hand. Some knowledge can be copied, some knowledge must be approached in reverence, and some knowledge seems to remain forever upon the knees of the gods. Water moves beneath the temple floor, not river water glittering beneath daylight, and not the troubled water of a flood. This water belongs to a deeper imagination, cool and hidden, rising from the unseen source beneath the earth, in the sacred city of Eridu, where reed marshes spread across the southern plain. Such water belongs to Enki, lord of wisdom, craft, cunning, fertility, and the mysterious underground freshwater depth. You approach his sanctuary through warm evening air. Frogs call softly among the reeds. Fish disturb the black surface of a channel, leaving widening circles beneath the moon. The temple rises ahead, built upon layers of human devotion, each generation placing its walls over foundations already ancient in memory. Here, the world seems less like dry land than a narrow refuge surrounded by water and silence. Enki is at home here. He is not a distant god sealed away in unreachable brilliance. His character moves like water itself, clever, generous, difficult to restrain, and always capable of slipping through narrow boundaries. He gives insight, organizes life, supports craft, and understands secrets that other divine powers may overlook. Yet generosity does not mean simplicity. A keeper of wisdom decides where wisdom flows and where it does not. In one Sumerian composition preserved by the University of Oxford, Enki announces that the divine powers have been gathered and placed in his hand. He declares that he brings arts and crafts into his sacred freshwater dwelling at Eridu. The image is striking. Civilization does not appear as a collection of accidental discoveries, slowly accumulated by hungry and inventive people. It appears gathered, carried, and stored beneath the authority of a god, a storehouse of order. You enter a chamber cooled by damp plaster and shaded walls. Somewhere nearby, water runs through a small channel, its soft sound never entirely fading. The smell is unlike the dusty tablet rooms of administrative buildings. Here there is wet stone, lamp oil, river plants, and incense smouldering in a bronze vessel. A priest places offerings near a basin, careful not to disturb the still surface. The water reflects a trembling flame. Within the stories told about Enki, wisdom is not limited to clever advice or sacred poetry. It includes the structures that make civilization recognizable. Crafts, offices, rituals, musical arts, speech, authority, judgment, and the ordering of cities all fall within the wide shadow of divine arrangement. Some powers sound noble and beautiful, others sound uneasy, because an ordered world also contains conflict, deception, fear, and grief. The collection is not innocent. This is what makes Enki's hidden storehouse feel so different from a pleasant schoolroom of heavenly learning. A schoolroom suggests instruction, a storehouse suggests possession. Within it lie forces that can shape cities, rulers, families, worship, desire, and labor. To control such powers is not simply to know how the world works, it is to decide what kind of world human beings must inhabit. You walk beside the imagined shelves, although no wooden shelves are named in the surviving composition. The mind supplies them naturally, as minds often do when confronted with invisible abundance. Perhaps you picture sealed baskets, engraved boxes, clay jars, or stone tablets glowing faintly in lamplight. Yet the ancient story does not require objects. These divine powers are more like principles, abilities, conditions, and sacred permissions held under Enki's care. A potter may shape a jar, a singer may raise a lament, a ruler may issue judgment, a builder may lay foundations straight against the cord. Each act seems human when seen from the marketplace, yet in the sacred imagination of Sumer, the ability behind each act can be traced toward a deeper possession. Skill is not merely learned, authority is not merely claimed. Culture is possible because certain powers have entered the human world through divine custody. Records from excavations at Eridu confirm that it was among the earliest major sacred centers of southern Mesopotamia. Archaeologists uncovered a long sequence of temple buildings there, rebuilt repeatedly upon earlier sanctuaries. This physical pattern gives unusual weight to the literary tradition surrounding Enki. People did not only tell stories about his ancient dwelling, they returned to the site across centuries, rebuilding the sacred place as though its connection with beginnings must never be allowed to disappear. The oldest stones often attract the deepest stories. At night, the sanctuary seems suspended between mud and water. Reeds brush against one another with a dry whisper. A bird startles from the marsh and vanishes into darkness. You hear sandals upon brick, then silence again. The priest has withdrawn, leaving a bowl of flour and a vessel of beer beside the sacred basin. Even a lord of hidden wisdom, apparently, receives the practical comforts of a well-stocked household. There is a fringe belief that Eridu concealed a literal underground chamber where divine records survived beneath the temple, protected from destruction by mud, water, and ritual secrecy. No archaeological discovery has established such a vault. The temple remains reveal centuries of worship, not a recovered room of supernatural instructions. Yet the belief persists because Enki's sacred home is repeatedly imagined as a place where powers are gathered below the visible world. The location matters. A mountain god may keep wisdom high above mortal reach. A sky god may conceal it among stars. Enki's wisdom rests beneath you, below the floor, below the city, below the ordinary certainty of solid earth. It lies in the freshwater deep, close enough to nourish fields and human bodies, yet hidden enough to suggest a source never fully visible. You feel that tension in the cool chamber. Human life depends upon water, though water cannot be commanded with complete confidence. It can fill canals, soften soil, and carry boats loaded with grain. It can also escape banks, swallow pathways, and alter familiar ground. Wisdom under Enki's care behaves in much the same manner. It creates order, while remaining capable of unsettling whatever seems secure. Historians continue to examine what the ancient texts mean by these divine powers. Some understand them as poetic expressions for the institutions, skills, and social roles needed by urban life. Others emphasize their religious character, arguing that ancient audiences experience civilization itself as sacred arrangement. The question remains open because the texts never divide practical life from divine purpose as neatly as modern thought often prefers. Perhaps that neat division is the modern luxury for a person living beside uncertain canals, dependent upon seasonal abundance and careful administration. Order may feel miraculous every morning it survives. Bread appears because fields are watered, grain is counted, ovens are fired, labor is organized, and agreements are remembered. Remove one quiet skill, and comfort begins to fray. Remove several, and the city trembles. Enki governs the invisible design holding those pieces together. You kneel near the basin, watching the reflected flame stretch across dark water. beneath the moving light, the depth becomes impossible to judge. It might be shallow enough for your hand to reach the bottom. It might descend through imagination into a place where every craft, office, song, boundary, and royal decree waits in silent custody. Nothing rises to greet you. There is only the gentle movement of water and the sense that human civilization, proud of its streets and temples, may once have understood itself differently, not as the owner of wisdom, but as its recipient, not as the inventor of every ordered practice, but as the borrower of powers kept elsewhere. In Eridu, the hidden library is no longer merely a tablet held in sacred hands. It becomes a reservoir beneath the world, a guarded depth from which the patterns of civilized life may slowly emerge. The water continues moving in darkness, and Enki, patient keeper of its unseen contents, reveals nothing that has not yet been permitted to flow. A cold glass case stands in a quiet museum room at Oxford. Inside it rests a clay object shaped like a tall, four-sided pillar, small enough to be carried in two hands. Its surface is covered with neat columns of wedge-shaped writing. The object looks restrained, almost modest, like a document prepared by someone with excellent patience and very limited interest in decoration. Yet it contains time on an impossible scale, held by the Ashmolean Museum. This clay prism preserves the most complete surviving version of a composition called the Sumerian king list. Its purpose seems simple at first. It names cities, rulers, and the lengths of their reigns. Kingship moves from one city to another, as though authority were a sacred lamp carried across the plain. A city receives it, a ruler holds it, the city falls, kingship passes elsewhere. Then you reach the opening lines. Kingship descends from heaven. It is placed first in Eridu, where a ruler named Alulim is said to govern for 28,800 years. Another ruler follows him, holding power for 36,000 years. Kingship then travels to Bad Tibur, where three rulers together occupy more than 100,000 years. It passes through Larag, Sippar, and finally Shurupak. 8 rulers fill an age of 241,200 years. You let those numbers settle slowly. A single human life is difficult enough to grasp when stretched across 80 years. A city enduring for centuries already feels ancient beyond personal memory. Here, the tablet asks you to contemplate kings who reign longer than entire eras of recorded history. Their lives do not simply exceed probability. They leave ordinary human measurement behind. Moving into a realm where numbers behave like sacred architecture, you stand now upon a broad plain at dawn, long before any museum case protects these names. Low mist lies above canals and marsh pools. The ground is dark with moisture, and distant birds disturb the silence with thin cries. No grand empire spreads across the landscape. Instead, scattered settlements rise from mud, reed, smoke, and labour, each small against the enormous open sky. Somewhere within this landscape, kingship arrives. The king list does not describe a campaign, a coronation feast, or an ambitious family seizing power. It speaks as though rule has descended from above, entering the earth as an institution already complete. Human beings do not invent kingship through argument, fear, or practical convenience. They receive it. They organize themselves beneath something older than any ruler wearing its authority. That is the unsettling heart of the record. A king can be remembered as brave, cruel, wise, or foolish. Kingship itself is treated differently. It appears almost like a sacred object, something moved between cities according to decisions beyond human reach. The ruler may carry the title, but the title does not belong to him. It existed before his reign and continues when his name is buried in dust. Scholars associated with Oxford have translated this text with careful attention to its repeated pattern. A city holds kingship, rulers govern there, then the city falls and kingship moves onward. The repetition creates a slow rhythm, formal and almost hypnotic. Each city seems favored for a time, then released into silence. Power remains, while human places become temporary vessels. Even the earliest names feel distant. Alulim stands at the beginning, nearly concealed behind the vast length of his supposed reign. Algar follows him, equally unreachable. At Bad Tibira appears Dumusid, remembered elsewhere in sacred storytelling as a shepherd, linked with divine life and loss. The list does not pause to explain whether these figures are human, divine, heroic, or something resting uneasily between categories. It simply counts their years. A curious modern fringe idea treats these enormous reigns as damaged memories of beings who are not entirely human. Some imagine visitors from the heavens, rulers of lost civilizations, or inherited records from an age destroyed beyond recovery. There is no accepted archaeological evidence for such explanations. Yet the fascination persists because the numbers appear deliberately immense. They do not resemble a modest scribal mistake repeated once. They create an entire age whose scale announces that ordinary history has not yet begun. The prism becomes a border marker. On one side lies familiar human struggle, cities competing, kings ruling for recognizable spans, monuments rising, armies marching, and names appearing in inscriptions. On the other side lies a dim country of immense reigns, heavenly kingship, and cities remembered almost as stations in a sacred journey. The tablet allows you to see both regions, yet it offers no safe bridge between them. Researchers continue to debate the purpose of this opening age. Some interpret the impossible reigns as a literary method for placing early kingship within sacred time. Others examine whether ancient number systems, scribal traditions, or political ideology helped shape such grand totals. Another interpretation sees the list as a claim that legitimate rule was always singular, always divinely authorized, even when real cities were competing at the same moment. The clay permits questions, not certainty. You imagine the ancient scribe who copied these names. He sits with a model tablet near his elbow, checking each figure before pressing it into fresh clay. Perhaps he never expects readers to calculate the total with modern skepticism. Perhaps the astonishing numbers are exactly the point. A beginning worthy of kingship must be greater than common years, greater than ordinary ancestry, greater even than the memory of surviving cities. To write that Alulim ruled for 28,800 years is to make a statement about distance. He is not merely an early ruler. He belongs to a time unreachable by living witness, family tradition, or surviving monument. His world has been placed beyond correction. No elder can dispute it. No ruined palace can fully explain it. The past becomes sacred because it has moved beyond human reach. A dry wind crosses the plain. Grains of sand tick softly against a reed wall. Within a settlement, a fire is being kindled, and smoke rises in a narrow grey line. People draw water, mend nets, carry baskets, soothe children, and prepare food. Human life feels familiar, tender, and brief. Above that daily movement hangs the claim that kingship has already arrived from heaven, bearing a history far older than anyone can comprehend. Perhaps that claim serves rulers, perhaps it comforts communities, perhaps it warns them. A city possessing kingship may flourish, but no city possesses it forever. Eridu loses it, Bad Tibira loses it, Lerag, Sippar, and Shurapak each hold their season of sacred favour, then release it into the flow of remembered time. The message is almost gentle in its severity. No palace, no temple, no proud city wall can permanently hold what the gods have allowed to descend. In the museum room, the prism remains perfectly still. Visitors pass quietly beside it, reading labels, glancing at its crowded surface, then moving onward toward other ancient objects. Few can read the signs pressed into its clay. Fewer still pause long enough to feel the immense darkness behind its opening sequence. 8 kings, 5 cities, more than 200,000 years. The list offers no library chamber filled with forbidden volumes. It offers something quieter and perhaps more troubling. A record claiming that human rule began inside a timeline no human memory can enter, somewhere beyond the first cities, beyond recognizable reigns, beyond the reach of ordinary counting. Kingship descends from heaven and begins its long passage across the earth. The names remain fixed in clay, the years remain impossible, and the silence surrounding them feels older than history itself. Rain is rare enough in the southern plain to feel almost intimate. A brief fall darkens the earth, releases the smell of damp dust, and leaves tiny pools shining between bricks. Yet the water gathering in your imagination is nothing like a merciful shower. It rises without tenderness, it thickens the sky, swallows distances, and transforms familiar canals into silent paths of danger. You stand in the city of Shurpak, where the air tastes of silt and smoke. Reed doors creak in the gathering wind. Families hurry through courtyards, lifting jars and baskets away from wet floors. Donkeys complain from enclosed pens. The sky has become a heavy ceiling, grey and strangely low, while the river seems to breathe with a force no wall can fully resist. Here, a man named Yusudra receives a warning. His name survives upon a damaged clay tablet found at ancient Nippur during excavations connected with the University of Pennsylvania. The surviving composition is often called the Sumerian flood story. Written in fragments, it preserves a tale of divine decision, a coming destruction, a faithful ruler, a great boat, terrified animals, storm winds, sacrifice, and life permitted to continue upon a changed earth. Much of the tablet is missing. That absence suits the story almost too well. You do not receive a complete account smoothly arranged from beginning to end. You receive broken lines, missing columns, and scenes emerging through damage, like rooftops visible through rising rain. A divine voice warns Yusudra through a wall. The warning is partly lost. The instructions are partly lost. Even the reason for the catastrophe slips away into the cracks. The silence is enormous. In the preserved lines, the storm rages for 7 days and 7 nights. Great winds sweep across the land, while the flood overwhelms the centres of human life. The boat is tossed upon violent water. No marketplace remains visible. No temple courtyard offers shelter. No field boundary matters when the earth itself disappears beneath moving darkness. You hear it in the night. Rain drums against reed roofing with such force that speech becomes useless. Wooden beams complain above your head. Outside, animals cry in frightened confusion, sensing the collapse of every ordinary pattern. A lamp flame shudders, grows thin, and finally dies. There is no comforting horizon. Only water struck by rain, and the blind motion of a vessel carrying fragile breath through ruin. The flood is not simply a disaster. It is a dividing line within memory. On one side stand the first rulers, sacred beginnings, astonishing lifespans, and the mysterious closeness of gods to the ordering of the world. On the other side stand cities rebuilt through effort, kings measured in recognizable years, fields restored by labor, and scribes gathering scattered traditions onto clay. Water does more than destroy houses. It separates kinds of time. When the storm loosens its grip, sunlight reaches Yusudra inside the vessel. He opens an opening in the boat and bows toward the returning light. He offers sacrifice, burning animals as gifts to the divine powers who allowed him to survive. In response, he is granted an extraordinary fate, receiving life like a god and being settled in a distant sacred place associated with sunrise. The survivor does not simply go home. That detail creates a peculiar unease. Yusudra preserves life, but he does not restore everything that vanished. His continued existence becomes separated from ordinary society. He is carried away into a distant region, honored yet removed, as though the person who remembers the lost world can no longer live comfortably among those building a newer one. Archaeological evidence confirms that flooding was a genuine and recurring danger within Mesopotamian river landscapes. Excavators at several ancient cities identified layers of deposited silt associated with local flood events. Although these layers do not prove one single flood covering every city at the same time, the physical landscape knew destruction by water. The literary imagination gathered that fear into a vast sacred rupture. A household can recover from rain damage. A civilization fears something larger. It fears the loss of records, names, ceremonies, measurements, songs, lineages, and instructions needed to make ordinary life understandable. When water fills a tablet room, damp clay may dissolve into shapeless mud. When a temple collapses, stored knowledge can vanish beside offerings and tools. When teachers die, their students inherit fewer explanations. A flood consumes not only bodies and buildings, but the fragile chain by which memory crosses generations. This may be why the tale feels connected with hidden knowledge. A destroyed age naturally invites the thought that something vital disappeared with it. Perhaps there were teachings never copied again. Perhaps certain rites, crafts, calculations, or divine instructions belong to the drowned cities. Perhaps survivors preserved only portions of a much greater inheritance, holding broken pieces without seeing the full design. A fringe tradition cherished by modern mystery seekers imagines the vessel carrying sealed tablets from the vanished world, a rescued library of sacred sciences guarded through the deluge. The surviving Sumerian fragment does not describe such a cargo. It speaks of the preservation of life, animals, sacrifice, and divine favor. Yet the fantasy grows easily in the empty spaces, because a survivor of total destruction seems almost destined to carry secrets. Scholars continue to differ over the relationship between flood traditions and ancient historical experience. Some see them as literary reflections of devastating regional floods, enlarged through generations of retelling. Others emphasize theological concerns, especially the fragile condition of humanity beneath decisions made in the divine realm. Still others study how scribes shaped flood narratives to explain the transition from sacred origins into political history. No reading closes the water completely. You step onto damp ground as the imagined waters withdraw. The mud clings heavily to your feet. Broken reeds lie tangled against walls, while fish tremble in shallow pools left among collapsed bricks. The air smells sharp and clean, but the silence carries no peace. A city emptied by water does not immediately become a city again. It is a wound shaped like streets. Somewhere, a surviving family begins gathering wood. Someone finds a jar not shattered by the current. Someone leads a frightened animal toward firmer ground. Someone presses a hand against a damaged wall, calculating whether it can stand. The gestures are small, practical, and deeply human. Life does not return with trumpets. It resumes through exhausted decisions made in wet clothing beneath a washed and indifferent sky. Yet the questions remain larger than the rebuilding. What did the waters remove from human reach? Why was one ruler warned while countless others vanished beneath the storm? Did the divine world preserve only life, or did it also preserve selected fragments of order? When the cities rose again, were their people rebuilding civilization, or reconstructing a diminished copy of something already lost? The river moves quietly beside the ruined banks. Its surface shines beneath fresh sunlight, gentle enough to deceive anyone arriving late. Within the clay tablet from Nippur, however, the water never entirely settles. It remains a boundary, a dark passage between the world remembered through sacred numbers and the world rebuilt by vulnerable human hands. And beneath that quiet current lies a troubling possibility. Perhaps the greatest forbidden archive was not deliberately locked away. Perhaps it was washed from the earth, leaving only fragments in the hands of those who survived. A splash disturbs the quiet shallows. You turn toward a reed-bordered inlet, where dawn spreads a silver path across the water. Mist hangs low above the marsh. Softening boats, fishing nets, and distant temple walls. A heron stands motionless among the stems, its narrow reflection trembling whenever the current brushes past. The city has not fully awakened, yet something in the water seems already alert. Not every teacher arrives through a doorway. In the religious traditions of Mesopotamia, a remarkable group of figures appears beside the earliest rulers of the land. They are 7 sages, beings associated with divine wisdom and with the gifts that allow settled life to flourish. Their presence is not announced by banners or soldiers. They emerge from sacred memory as advisors, builders, guardians, and bearers of knowledge that human society does not appear to possess alone. Their home is connected with Eridu. That city rests close to the ancient marshland, where fresh water, reeds, fish, mud, and sky compose a world of shifting boundaries. Land is never entirely separate from water there. A pathway may remain firm beneath sunrise, then soften near evening. A channel may look narrow, then carry boats, reeds, grain, and whispered stories toward the temple district. Within such a landscape, wisdom rising from water feels natural. A Sumerian temple hymn preserved and studied by scholars at the University of Oxford speaks of 7 sages in connection with the building and enlarging of a holy sanctuary. This detail matters. Their wisdom is not merely secret speech murmured in darkness. It takes form in construction, measurement, sacred space, and the patient transformation of raw earth into a dwelling suitable for divine presence. You walk toward that sanctuary as sunlight warms the upper bricks. Workers have already begun their tasks. One mixes mud and chopped straw in a shallow pit, pressing the mixture beneath bare feet. Another carries shaped bricks in a basket against his shoulder. A master builder stretches a cord along the foundation line, testing whether the wall will rise straight. Among them, imagination places the sages. They do not need to raise their voices. A hand indicates where a corner should meet. A finger follows the line of a drainage channel. An eye studies the direction of the sun across an entrance. Under their instruction, mud no longer remains formless. It becomes wall, platform, stair, sanctuary, and ordered enclosure. Civilization begins with details. A wall set poorly will crack. A canal cut carelessly will betray a field. A calendar misunderstood will trouble planting. A ritual neglected may leave a community feeling exposed beneath forces it cannot control. The sages represent the comforting thought that someone understands the design, someone knows the proper measurements, and someone remembers the rules that ordinary people are still learning. Yet comfort soon becomes unease. Why would humanity require teachers from a sacred watery realm? Why must the first arrangements of city life be attributed to figures standing somewhere between divine and human existence? The stories suggest a world where knowledge is not born naturally in village conversation. It arrives through mediation, offered by beings whose origin remains beyond the common household. You hear a wooden mallet strike a peg. The sound travels cleanly through the morning air. A foundation trench crosses the earth before you, narrow and precise. A temple is not only a place of prayer, it is an argument made in brick. It declares that a city knows where holiness belongs, where offerings must be carried, where authority gathers, and where the fragile order of daily existence may be renewed. The 7 sages stand close to that declaration. Texts from Mesopotamia connect such sages with wisdom, ritual expertise, sacred protection, and the construction of significant buildings. In a later tablet from the city of Uruk, 7 ancient rulers are paired with 7 sages, linking royal authority with wise counsel during the most remote age. The tablet does not offer a casual list of talented officials. It creates an image of rightful rule guided by knowledge greater than the king himself. Even power needs instruction. You enter a partially completed chamber where the floor remains cool and shaded. Light falls through an unfinished doorway, revealing dust drifting slowly in the air. A bowl of river clay rests near the threshold, beside a measuring cord and a polished stone weight. These humble tools seem transformed by the presence of the sages. They are no longer simply objects of work. They are instruments through which divine intelligence touches Earth. Perhaps this explains their enduring appeal. Human beings rarely trust a city that claims to have invented itself. Great walls require plans. Sacred calendars require observation. Healing requires remembered mixtures and practiced hands. Music requires rhythm passed from teacher to pupil. The figure of the sage gives a face to accumulated understanding, then places that face at the misty edge of the human world. A later Babylonian priest writing in Greek told of a strange teacher appearing from the sea, covered like a fish, who spent the day instructing people in letters, building, agriculture, law, and the arts of living together. At night, the being returned to the water. His description belongs to a much later age, shaped by different language and audience. Still, it preserves the old mood with remarkable clarity. The teacher does not stay. He enters human life, gives knowledge, and withdraws into a realm that cannot be followed comfortably. He leaves people with skills, structures, and questions. Was he honored because he taught useful things? Was he feared because he knew too much? Or was the true mystery simply that human culture could feel so miraculous that its origin demanded an extraordinary explanation? A charmingly peculiar detail appears in protective ritual practice. Small figures representing wise protective beings were sometimes placed beneath floors or near doorways in Mesopotamian buildings. Their task was not to decorate rooms for admiring visitors. They remained hidden, buried where household life passed above them, quietly guarding vulnerable spaces against harmful forces. Wisdom could be buried for protection. Scholars continue to discuss how these sages changed across centuries of tradition. Some view them as mythic expressions of priestly learning, builders, ritual specialists, and advisors whose skills became enlarged into sacred ancestry. Others emphasize their connection with cosmic order, suggesting they represented the belief that civilization depended upon knowledge descending from the divine world. Their forms, names, and functions shift across texts, leaving their earliest identity tantalizingly difficult to recover. The uncertainty makes them more haunting. You step back into sunlight. The marsh now gleams brightly beyond the temple mound. Fishermen call to one another from low boats. Children gather reeds along a bank, laughing when their feet sink unexpectedly into soft mud. Near the sanctuary, workers continue laying bricks beneath the eye of a foreman who measures each line twice. Sacred teaching and ordinary labor mingle without protest. That may be the deepest secret carried by the seven sages. They do not bring treasure that can be locked inside a chest. They bring methods. They bring proportions, crafts, rites, observations, protections, and the disciplined habits through which a fragile settlement becomes a city. Their library is carried not only in tablets, but in straight walls, watered fields, careful ceremonies, and the knowledge stored inside trained human hands. The breeze changes, bringing the scent of reeds and wet earth. Out upon the water, a dark shape briefly breaks the shining surface, then disappears beneath ripples. Perhaps it is only a fish. In the peaceful brightness of morning, that explanation is entirely sensible. Still, the marsh keeps its distance, and somewhere within its quiet depths, the seven teachers remain suspended between memory and myth, carrying the troubling suggestion that humanity learned how to build its world from visitors it could never fully understand. A copper bell gives one low note in the temple courtyard. The sound is not loud, yet it seems to arrange the space around you. Workers lower baskets beside a wall. A musician pauses with one hand resting upon a stringed instrument. A judge seated beneath a shaded awning turns toward two men waiting to speak. Near the gate, a child watches a potter shape wet clay upon a turning surface. Everything appears separate. A song belongs to a musician, a verdict belongs to a judge, a jar belongs to a craft worker, a crown belongs to a ruler. Yet in the ancient religious imagination, these separate threads could be understood as parts of a single sacred collection. The people of Sumer described certain powers that gave civilization its recognizable form. Modern translators often call them divine ordinances, sacred powers, or principles of culture. They are difficult to define neatly. They are not laws written upon a courtroom wall. They are not tools resting inside a workshop. They are not spells, although they can feel magical when described through sacred poetry. They are capacities, offices, customs, qualities, and conditions that allow organized life to exist. A city possesses them when it can rule, judge, build, sing, mourn, celebrate, deceive, and remember. That last pairing is important. The University of Oxford preserves a composition in which a remarkable catalogue of these divine ordinances unfolds through repeated declarations. Among them appear kingship, priestly office, truth, falsehood, heroic strength, craft work, wisdom, decision-making, music, rejoicing, lamentation, conflict, kindness, and the plundering of cities. The list does not offer civilization as a polished gift basket filled only with pleasant achievements. It includes the wound with the bandage. You walk through the courtyard while each divine ordinance seems to awaken around you. A carpenter smooths a plank with steady movements, creating a door for a household. Nearby, a metalworker fans charcoal until sparks rise brightly from the furnace. A singer practices a measured melody for an offering ceremony, while a mother corrects a restless child with a glance sharpened by long experience. Craft, beauty, discipline, affection. At another edge of the square, two officials argue quietly over a sealed tablet. Their voices remain controlled, yet distrust sits between them like an unwanted guest. A soldier leans against a wall, his spear upright, waiting for orders that might never arrive. An elderly woman carries a small bowl toward a shrine, her shoulders weighted by a private grief no stranger can measure. Dispute, force, sorrow, or devotion, the ancient catalogue places these things together without apology. Civilization is not presented as goodness steadily defeating disorder. Instead, order appears to contain opposites from its beginning. There is truth, but also falsehood. There is justice, but also judgment, which may frighten those brought beneath it. There is rejoicing, but also lamentation. There are builders, but also those who destroy cities. The library is darker than expected. You might have hoped that divine knowledge meant instructions for irrigation, music, healing, temple plans, and beautiful ceremonies beneath clean skies. Those elements are present, yet the collection also contains the sharp edges of living among other human beings. Cleverness becomes deceit, authority becomes coercion, courage becomes violence, desire becomes rivalry. Celebration casts the shape of grief behind it. Perhaps a complete archive cannot exclude unpleasant pages. A city without sorrow would need no songs of mourning. A city without dishonesty would need fewer judges. A city without enemies would have little need for soldiers or fortified gates. The catalogue suggests that civilized life is not protected from hardship by sacred order. Hardship itself is included within the design, named, recognized, and placed among the powers that shape the human condition. You stop beside a stall where dyed wool hangs from a wooden beam. Scarlet, cream, and dark blue threads move gently in the breeze. The dyer has learned how water, mineral color, plant matter, timing, and patience join together. Her skill can clothe a priest, decorate a wealthy household, or warm a tired child through winter nights. A few steps away, a messenger carries news of a dispute between fields. Both belong to the same city. The composition is fascinating because it does not treat sacred power as a simple moral reward. An ordinance may be revered because it is essential, not because it is always gentle. Fire warms bread and consumes houses. Speech offers comfort and spreads lies. Kingship gives direction and demands obedience. Writing preserves wisdom and records debts that may burden families for years. The gods appear to understand complexity very well. One eccentric modern interpretation imagines these divine ordinances as portable devices, coded instructions, or fragments of an ancient operating system handed down by technologically advanced beings. Such readings can be entertaining beside a dim lamp, especially when ordinary life has become too sensible. Yet the clay literature offers something more disturbing than hidden machinery. It imagines social reality itself as sacred equipment, complete with beauty, cruelty, labor, and loss. You do not need a shining device to control a city. You need ownership, ceremony, memory, fear, skill, loyalty, punishment, pleasure, and belief. You need people willing to plant fields, obey decisions, bury loved ones, raise children, repair walls, and accept that life possesses rules larger than individual longing. The divine ordinances describe these invisible structures, the architecture hidden within every crowded street. Researchers continue to debate how ancient listeners understood such catalogues. Some scholars view them as poetic classifications of cultural institutions and human experiences. Others see them as theological statements, declaring that every meaningful feature of urban life depends upon divine authorization. There are also questions about whether each ordinance represented a fixed concept, a ritual emblem, or a flexible expression shaped by different compositions. The tablets do not flatten the mystery. A priest passes near you, carrying a small covered basket toward an inner doorway. You cannot see what rests inside it. Perhaps it contains bread, oil, incense, or a sacred object used during ceremony. Yet the concealment draws your attention more strongly than an uncovered gift might have done. Human curiosity is wonderfully predictable in that respect. Hide a basket, and suddenly it must contain the secret plan of the universe. The true secret may be less comfortable. Civilization does not descend as a pure blessing. It arrives as a complete arrangement, bearing music beside mourning, wisdom beside manipulation, family beside rivalry, craftsmanship beside destruction. The sacred catalogue does not pretend that human beings can accept its sweetness while refusing its bitterness. To receive an ordered world is to receive the whole difficult pattern. Even the evening light seems divided. Golden colour rests upon the upper walls, while the lower courtyards settle into shadow. Someone begins playing a slow melody nearby, gentle notes rising above the murmur of voices. Beyond the gate, a disagreement flares briefly, then fades as people return to their tasks. The city breathes through contrast, beauty and strain woven so closely that separating them would tear the cloth entirely. You look toward the temple doorway. Within that dim interior, the sacred powers are not stacked like harmless treasures, waiting for grateful hands. They are imagined as the profound conditions of human life, the forces that make cities possible and make cities painful. Their keeper does not merely guard instructions for progress. He guards the strange totality of civilization, including everything people wish they could leave outside the walls. The bell sounds once more. The judge raises his hand. The musician resumes playing. The potter lifts a finished vessel into the light. Somewhere, a woman begins a lament for a name no tablet can restore to breath. All of it belongs within the order, and the divine library, glimpsed through the catalogue of its powers, contains not only the wisdom people seek, but the burdens they spend their lives learning to bear. A heavy wooden door swings inward upon a bronze fitting. The room beyond is cooler than the courtyard and far quieter. Outside, sheep complain near a shaded enclosure. Workers shift baskets of grain, and a brewer pours a frothing measure into storage jars. Inside, the sound diminishes to the soft scrape of sandals and the occasional clicking of a seal against clay. You have entered the practical heart of a temple. The sanctuary itself may gleam with offerings, polished vessels, fragrant smoke, and garments prepared for divine ceremony. Yet sacred life requires storerooms, workshops, kitchens, livestock pens, fields, canals, supervisors, messengers, and people who remember exactly what has been given, received, promised, or lost. A god may own a city in principle, but somebody still has to count the onions. The room is long and narrow, with baskets lined against plastered walls. Some hold tablets wrapped in reed matting. Others contain clay labels attached to jars or bundles. Small tablets rest upon a low shelf, their surfaces marked with neat columns of entries. A seal impression appears upon one piece of clay, showing a scene so tiny that you must bring it close to the lamp. This is no imagined chamber of heavenly records. This is a working archive. At ancient Nippur, excavations sponsored by the University of Pennsylvania uncovered Sumerian administrative tablets from temple archives, recording the affairs of sacred institutions in the river plain. Such documents list grain, livestock, land, labor, offerings, deliveries, and responsibilities. They reveal temples not merely as places where worshippers approached a divine image, but as great organized households whose daily survival depended upon written memory. A temple eats. It owns flocks and fields. It receives wool, grain, fish, oil, dates, and beer. It employs workers and distributes rations. It repairs roofs, maintains doors, orders vessels, feeds ritual personnel, and presents offerings according to established practice. Its god may be invisible, but the estate devoted to that god is tangible, busy, and hungry. You follow an official through the archive room. He carries a tablet listing measured quantities of barley delivered from fields associated with the temple. Another tablet records sheep entrusted to a herdsman. A third identifies woven goods prepared by women working under institutional supervision. Each tablet is plain, yet together they form a portrait of organized dependence. Many lives pass through these signs. A laborer may receive food because an entry confirms his service. A herder may be questioned because numbers do not match expectations. A textile worker may be known only through quantities of wool or garments. A temple official may enjoy comfortable authority while appearing in the record as a careful receiver of goods. Writing turns human effort into lines, totals, seals, and obligations. There is dignity in that record, and discomfort too. The temple archive preserves people because it needs their work. It remembers fields because they produce food. It remembers animals because they increase, decline, wander, or become offerings. Its memory is not sentimental. It is structured by responsibility, ownership, and the steady appetite of an institution believed to serve divine order. You pause beside a large storage jar sealed at the neck. A clay fastening bears the impression of a cylinder seal rolled carefully across its damp surface. The design may identify an official or guarantee that the contents have not been opened without permission. The seal is beautiful, filled with graceful figures and divine symbols, yet its purpose is practical. It says that access matters. It says someone may enter and someone else may not. Even sacred grain requires security. A peculiar detail from temple life is that jobs appearing small to modern eyes could carry sacred importance. Sweeping the floor of a holy area was not simply removing dust from bricks. The person doing so entered space associated with the divine presence and high ceremony. In a temple world, proximity could transform an ordinary task into a privilege, a duty, and perhaps a quiet source of status. The archive has its own thresholds. Not every worker may handle stored tablets. Not every visitor may examine accounts. Not everyone can read the wedges, interpret totals, recognize seals, or know which missing delivery should concern an overseer. Knowledge remains close to food, land, labor, and authority. The person who understands the records can see the temple household as a whole, while many others experience only their own narrow obligation within it. The hidden library becomes very earthly here. It is hidden not behind magic, but behind training, office, access, and power. A basket filled with dull clay records may be invisible to someone unable to read it. A tablet documenting ownership may change a family's life while appearing no more impressive than a dried biscuit. The archive needs no golden lock. Its language, placement, and institutional guardianship already protect it. A priest enters with 2 attendants carrying bread, beer, and fragrant oil. They move toward an inner room where offerings will be presented. Their footsteps pass close to tablets documenting deliveries of similar goods. The contrast is gentle but revealing. What becomes sacred upon an altar has already travelled through harvesting, measuring, transporting, accounting, receiving, sealing, storing, and releasing. Devotion has an administrative shadow. The smell of bread drifts into the record room, warm and comforting. For a moment, the temple seems almost domestic, as though a very large household is preparing supper for a guest who never visibly arrives. Then you notice the shelves again, each filled with obligations fixed in clay. The household belongs to a god, and human beings keep it functioning through exact labor. Researchers continue to discuss how completely temples controlled economic life in different Sumerian cities and periods. Older descriptions sometimes pictured every worker, field, and storehouse beneath a single temple system. More recent study often reveals a more complicated world, including palace interests, family estates, private transactions, and overlapping authorities. The sacred institution was powerful, but the city was never merely one enormous ledger. Complexity does not diminish the archive, it makes the archive more important. Whenever property, offerings, wages, rents, rations, or duties overlap, memory becomes contested ground. Spoken promises fade. Witnesses change their minds. Officials die. A sealed tablet remains, quietly asserting that something was measured and acknowledged under watchful eyes. A modern fringe story sometimes imagines temple basements containing forbidden shelves reserved only for priests, packed with lost instructions concerning the gods themselves. Excavations have revealed archives, storerooms, foundation deposits, sacred furnishings, and administrative documents. They have not uncovered a proven secret library explaining divine origins, yet the old temples did preserve specialized knowledge, and access to ritual and institutional information could certainly be limited. The lamp trembles as air enters through the doorway. A clerk places a newly finished tablet inside a basket, arranging it beside others linked to the same account. Perhaps these tablets will be consulted within days. Perhaps they will be kept until their usefulness ends. Perhaps a roof will fall and bury them so thoroughly that they remain unread until a distant century discovers their patient silence. You look around the narrow room once more. Here are no shining tablets of the heavens, no voices rising from deep water, and no impossible kings counted across sacred ages. Here are baskets, seals, deliveries, rations, offerings, fields, workers, and jars. Yet this practical collection reveals how a human institution might imitate divine knowledge. It gathers fragments of a city into ordered memory. It watches movement. It confirms duties. It decides which claims can endure. Outside, incense curls above an altar. Inside, clay tablets preserve the machinery that makes the offering possible. A temple is a home for a god. But it is also a house of records. Within its guarded rooms, sacred authority acquires lists, seals, shelves, and careful hands. The library of heaven may remain beyond mortal reach, but its earthly reflection is already here, resting in baskets of clay beneath the scent of bread and oil. A reed squeaks against damp clay. The sound is so small that it might be lost beneath the buzzing of flies outside the doorway. Yet inside this narrow room, it carries the weight of judgment. Several boys sit cross-legged upon woven mats, their tablets balanced carefully against their palms. A teacher moves between them with the slow patience of a man who has already seen every possible mistake. One student has crowded his signs together. Another has made his wedges too deep. A third has clearly decided that accuracy is a beautiful ideal best pursued tomorrow. The room smells of wet earth, warm bodies, lamp soot, and the faint bitterness of reed stems. Sunlight enters through a small opening, illuminating clay dust upon the floor. Near the wall stand shallow baskets holding practice tablets, some freshly prepared, others covered with awkward rows of signs. Outside, A vendor calls from a lane. Inside, no one looks away from the teacher. This is the scribal school. In Sumerian tradition, such a place is remembered as the House of Tablets, where students learn the demanding arts of writing, calculation, vocabulary, and formal composition. Tablets excavated at Nippur by expeditions associated with the University of Pennsylvania preserve exercises copied by learners. Some carry lists of words. Some present model passages alongside uncertain student attempts. Others contain the careful repetition through which a difficult writing system entered the hand. Knowledge does not survive by admiration alone. It survives because someone copies it. A master places a small tablet before a student. Upon one side, the teacher has written a model line with clean, confident marks. The student studies it, moistens his own clay, and begins to reproduce what he sees. He presses too gently at first, leaving wedges so timid they almost vanish. The teacher taps the surface with one finger and says something brief. The boy tries again, this time with unnecessary enthusiasm. The clay now bears a wound. You sit near the doorway, hearing the pattern of learning. Press, turn, lift, pause. The movement repeats until the wrist begins to remember what the mind keeps losing. A student learns signs for barley, ox, house, king, water, field, silver, bird, and temple. Then come longer lists, rare words, professional terms, divine names, place names, measurements, and phrases drawn from compositions treasured by learned adults. The task is not light. A cuneiform sign may carry several values. Depending upon the word and setting, a student must recognize forms, memorize readings, and understand when a mark behaves as sound, word, or clue to meaning. There is no convenient alphabet waiting to rescue him. His education expands like a courtyard swept at dawn, always revealing another patch of dust requiring attention. The teacher dictates a word. Several heads bend lower. Reeds move with nervous care. One child pauses too long, glancing sideways at the tablet beside him. The teacher notices immediately. A look crosses the room, cool and exact. The boy returns to his own work, suddenly fascinated by personal integrity. Not every tablet is meant to last. Practice pieces may be smoothed flat and used again. A learner's clumsy lines need not enter eternity simply because they have appeared on clay. Yet some survive through accident, abandonment, disposal, or burial in ruined spaces. Those discarded exercises now reveal how scribal tradition continued, not through mysterious inspiration, but through repetition, correction, embarrassment, memory, and the gradual conquest of an aching wrist. A quirky school text preserves the voice of a student describing his demanding day. He rises, prepares his work, receives lessons, fears reprimand, and seeks the approval of his teacher through a family meal and gifts. The account may exaggerate for humor or instruction, but its mood feels wonderfully recognizable. Education is presented as a mixture of ambition, anxiety, parental involvement, and the ancient hope that a generous dinner might improve academic circumstances. The teacher calls an older student forward. This one does not copy simple vocabulary. His tablet contains lines from a composition written in formal language, carefully arranged and perhaps already old in his own lifetime. He reads aloud, slowly but steadily. The words honor a deity, describe a sacred place, or praise the qualities expected of a ruler. Each line has travelled through previous hands, from model tablet to learner, from teacher to student, across rooms smelling of clay and smoke. Here the school reveals its deeper purpose. An archive can store a text, but storage alone does not keep meaning alive. Tablets may rest silently for generations, unread and gradually forgotten. A trained scribe gives old words renewed breath. He recognizes their signs, copies their language, explains unfamiliar phrases, and ensures that a poem or ritual instruction enters another generation of practiced hands. The schoolroom is a bridge made of mistakes. A damaged myth may survive because a student once copied it for practice. A hymn may remain available because instructors considered it useful for advanced learning. A catalogue of divine names may continue because memory, ritual, and education all required its preservation. The learner believes he is completing an assignment. Without knowing it, he may be keeping a vanished world from sinking entirely into silence. Scholars still discuss the exact nature of scribal schooling in ancient Mesopotamia. Some evidence suggests organized instruction associated with professional households and institutional careers. Other evidence encourages caution about imagining every school as a formal academy with identical customs. Literary accounts of classroom discipline may contain exaggeration, satire, and idealized memory. The tablets reveal learning clearly, while leaving the daily structure of that learning open to patient argument. A girl passes outside carrying bread upon a tray. Whether girls regularly received formal scribal training remains difficult to measure across different cities and centuries. Most known scribes are men, but women in Mesopotamia could hold literate roles, especially within elite households, religious offices, and administrative environments. Behind the surviving names may stand other learners whose hands entered clay without leaving an easily recognized identity. The teacher now places a fresh exercise before the room. It is a list, plain and orderly. Students repeat the signs one line at a time, their reeds entering clay with soft, disciplined pressure. There is no grand revelation. No hidden door opens beneath the floor. No heavenly voice interrupts the lesson. Yet something extraordinary is occurring in its most ordinary form. The past is being rebuilt inside young minds. You watch one student complete his line and lift the tablet toward the light. His signs remain uneven, but they are readable. Pride enters his face briefly, then disappears when the teacher points toward one final correction. The boy sighs, smooths the flawed mark, and begins again. His irritation is quiet, sincere, and almost sacred. For only through such persistence can sacred stories continue. A people may believe that wisdom originated among divine powers. They may imagine sacred knowledge guarded within heavenly tablets or hidden depths. Yet for those teachings to remain among human beings, someone must rise in the morning, sit upon a mat, endure correction, and copy each wedge with care. The room gradually cools as the sunlight shifts. Finished tablets gather beside the wall. The teacher examines them one by one, accepting some, returning others with a weary glance. Students flex their cramped fingers and look toward the doorway, where late afternoon has turned the lane a soft golden brown. Soon, their exercises will be carried away, erased, stored, or lost. Somewhere among them a line may endure, not because its student understood every secret contained within it, not because he knew distant eyes would study his work. It endures because learning is often an act of humble preservation, performed by tired hands in quiet rooms. The retouch is clay once more. A sacred name takes shape, and through a child's imperfect copying, an ancient voice refuses to disappear. A riverboat waits against the quay, rocking gently in green water. Its painted prow points northward through canals shining beneath the afternoon sun. Servants carry bundles aboard, stepping carefully across a narrow plank. Fine garments lie folded beneath woven coverings. Jars of beer have been secured against the hull. Near the stern stands a woman whose stillness seems more commanding than any shouted order. Inanna is preparing to travel. Her city is Uruk, a place of monumental precincts, workshops, storehouses, and rising ambition. Its walls gather households, merchants, priests, craftsmen, musicians, and rulers into a restless urban world. A great city may possess people, brick, grain, animals, and wealth. Yet sacred imagination requires something more. To become truly splendid, a city must possess the powers that make civilization complete. Those powers are held in Eridu. The boat loosens from the quay. Poles enter the water with gentle splashes, sending small circles outward through floating reeds. You sit beneath an awning while Uruk recedes behind you, its buildings softening into sunlit shapes. The journey carries Inanna toward Enki, keeper of wisdom, whose sacred dwelling belongs to the fresh waters beneath the earth. No army accompanies her, no siege engines groan through dust, no frightened messenger races ahead with warnings of battle. The goddess travels in beauty and purpose, carrying no visible weapon stronger than her presence. She's not entering a battlefield, she is entering hospitality, where courtesy, desire, wine, and careless generosity may accomplish what force cannot. At Eridu, evening settles over the water. Lamps shine within Enki's sacred dwelling, reflected in bowls, jars, and polished vessels. Musicians play softly while attendants pour beer until the bronze cups gleam wet at their rims. The surviving Sumerian composition, preserved through tablets translated by scholars at the University of Oxford, describes Enki and Inanna drinking together in the sacred watery realm, enjoying beer and sweet wine. It is a warm, dangerous scene. Enki welcomes her with ceremony. Food is offered, drink flows freely. Compliments gather in the air, smooth as oil upon water. Inanna sits composed, receiving the hospitality of a god whose wisdom has arranged the structures of civilized life. He possesses what her city desires. She knows it. Perhaps he knows she knows it. Divine gatherings can be remarkably similar to human ones, only with larger consequences and better tableware. Cup follows cup. The room softens around its edges. Laughter becomes easier. Judgment becomes generous. Enki begins presenting sacred powers to Inanna, one group following another in the rhythm of celebration. He gives authority, priestly offices, skilled crafts, heroic qualities, music, truthful speech, deceptive speech, judgment, lamentation, rejoicing, and the complicated instruments through which a city becomes glorious and troubled. Inanna accepts every gift. She does not politely choose only weaving, song, and wise counsel. She receives the full burden of urban greatness, including powers that disturb comfortable dreams. A city wishing to dominate memory cannot request beauty without conflict, authority without fear, or celebration without mourning. Inanna gathers the whole difficult inheritance, because magnificence has never been a delicate possession. The gifts are placed aboard her boat of heaven. You stand upon the quay as servants move with sudden efficiency. Sacred powers are not visible as jars or chests, yet the story lets you feel their weight. The vessel sits lower in the water, heavy with the architecture of human life. Ropes are released. Poles push from the bank. The boat glides away from Eridu while the lamps behind it flicker along the shore. Only when quiet returns does Enki understand. Mourning in the sacred dwelling is probably less graceful. Empty vessels stand where the feast had glittered. Servants avoid unnecessary conversation. The god of wisdom considers what he has granted, and wisdom, at that moment, may feel rather like a stern guest arriving late to a celebration. He calls his minister and asks where the boat has reached. Then he sends forces to retrieve it. Again and again, obstacles confront Inanna's vessel along the waterways. Strange guardians rise against her passage. Great fish and powerful beings are commanded to seize the boat and return the sacred powers to their former keeper. Yet Inanna does not travel alone. Her faithful attendant, Nisaba, protects the journey and enables the boat to continue. The river becomes a contested road. Water strikes the hull as the boat presses onward. Reeds whip against its sides. The sky darkens into violet, and the last sunlight catches upon ripples like small copper blades. Somewhere behind, Eridu's sacred authority reaches outward, attempting to reclaim what has departed. Ahead, Uruk waits with open gates, awaiting a cargo that no merchant could price. The arrival is triumphant. Inanna brings the powers into her city, and Uruk receives them with celebration. Sacred order has changed location. The story does not treat civilization as a treasure discovered quietly by patient citizens. It presents cultural splendor as something transferred from one divine center to another, won through charm, risk, loyalty, and refusal to surrender the cargo once gained. Records from excavated Uruk confirm that the city became one of the greatest early urban centers in southern Mesopotamia. Its monumental architecture, administrative practices, and artistic traditions testify to extraordinary social organization. The myth gives that historical brilliance a sacred explanation. Uruk flourishes because its goddess has gathered the powers required for urban greatness and brought them safely home. The tale also carries an amusingly sharp observation. A deity renowned for wisdom loses civilization's defining powers during a drinking feast. Ancient storytellers were not incapable of gentle irony. The scene offers no dull sermon against beer, which would have been deeply inconvenient in Mesopotamia. Instead, it suggests that power can be transferred through appetite, admiration, and a moment when guarded judgment becomes dangerously open-handed. Modern mystery seekers sometimes picture the boat of heaven as a vehicle carrying advanced devices, scientific archives, or coded knowledge from a lost civilization. The surviving tablets provide no machinery, engines, or technical blueprints. Their interest lies elsewhere. They imagine the components of society itself as portable sacred possessions, capable of being removed from one city and installed within another. That thought remains strange enough. Scholars continue to debate the deeper political meaning of the composition. Some understand it as a sacred justification for Uruk's prestige, explaining why the city deserved its cultural authority. Others read the feast as a subtle reflection upon rivalry between important religious centers, with divine storytelling turning political competition into an unforgettable journey. The narrative permits admiration for Inanna, sympathy for Enki, and uncertainty about whether the transfer is theft, gift, or clever destiny. You walk through Uruk as celebration gathers. Drums pulse from an open court. Lamps burn along walls washed with fresh plaster. Weavers display fine cloth. Singers lift their voices beneath the night sky. Officials carry tablets through busy gateways. Priests prepare offerings inside shadowed sanctuaries. The city seems filled with new confidence, as though each street has received an invisible current of purpose. Yet the cargo includes unease. Where sacred powers can be transferred, they can also be contested. Where knowledge can be possessed, it can be withheld, borrowed, persuaded away, or taken under questionable circumstances. The divine archive is no longer only guarded, it has become vulnerable to ambition. Its contents can move along water, entering another city beneath music and applause. The boat rests beside the quay, its journey complete. Moonlight trembles upon the canal. Workers withdraw from the landing place, leaving wet ropes coiled on stone within the glowing city. Celebration continues softly, like distant rain upon reeds. Inanna has brought home the powers of civilization, but the question remains quietly unsettled. Were the sacred secrets given freely, or does every shining city stand upon knowledge someone else once believed was theirs to keep? Salt wind moves gently across a plain that once leaned much closer to the sea. You stand at Abu Sharain, the mound beneath which ancient Eridu lies folded into the earth. The landscape is broad, pale, and almost painfully exposed. Nothing here resembles a green paradise awaiting the first footsteps of civilization. The ground is dry beneath your sandals. Broken brick lies scattered like dull pottery. Low ridges mark walls reduced by seasons into the colour of dust. Yet the silence feels inhabited. Long ago, channels and marshes brought water close to this settlement. Boats could slip through reed-lined approaches carrying fish, woven mats, jars, offerings, and news from communities stretched across the watery south. The air would have smelled of mud, fish scales, smoke, damp reeds, and the sharp mineral breath of shallow water beneath hard sunlight. Eridu belongs to beginnings. In certain versions of the ancient king list, kingship descends from heaven and first takes its seat here, not in a fortress crowded with soldiers, not within a wealthy royal court glittering with metal and tribute. It begins in a marshland city associated with fresh water, ritual purity, and the quiet authority of Enki. You climb the mound slowly. Each step crosses fragments of habitation placed upon older fragments. Layers of human intention press down into the soil. A wall collapses, another wall rises, a sacred platform weakens. A new platform is built above it. Generations do not abandon the place when bricks soften and corners fail. They rebuild upon the same ground, as though holiness has entered the soil too deeply to be moved elsewhere. Archaeologists Fuad Safar and Seaton Lloyd excavated Eridu for the Iraqi Directorate of Antiquities during the middle 20th century. Beneath the later monumental remains, they uncovered a long sequence of sacred buildings, one resting upon another. The earliest were modest structures, simple in scale, yet each rebuilding enlarged the sacred focus of the settlement. A humble shrine gradually became a temple complex, and the temple complex eventually supported a towering stepped monument. The earth records devotion through repetition. You approach the footprint of an early sanctuary. Its surviving lines are low, almost shy beneath the sky. It may once have held an offering table and a place for sacred service. A family approaching with fish or grain would not have seen a grand mountain of brick. They would have seen a small, meaningful building rising from an uncertain watery landscape. That modest beginning is strangely moving. Cities rarely announce themselves at birth. No infant settlement declares that scholars will argue over its age several thousand years later. People build what they need. They repair what fails. They return to places where ceremonies seem effective, where water remains available, and where the presence of a god feels especially near. The sacred building grows because belief returns. A fisherman steps from a narrow boat and carries his catch toward the shrine. A woman brings grain in a reed basket, lifting it carefully against her hip. Children follow adults across damp ground, pausing whenever frogs leap from the path. A priest tends a small fire whose smoke drifts low before climbing into open brightness. Life here is intimate, damp, and practical. The god of Eridu does not rule from a dry, distant height. Enki is associated with hidden fresh water beneath the ground, the source that gives sweetness to fields and life to settlements. The temple built for him rises where marsh, channel, shoreline, and human effort meet. A sanctuary of wisdom begins in a place where survival depends upon reading water correctly. That choice feels revealing. A desert teaches endurance, a mountain teaches distance, a marsh teaches uncertainty. Ground appears, softens, disappears, and returns according to water and season. Reeds hide movement. Fish arrive unseen. Boats follow channels whose shapes can change. In such a place, wisdom is not decoration. It is the difference between abundance and hunger, safe passage and dangerous mud. The oldest sacred city carries the character of its landscape. Excavation reports describe pottery, graves, temple levels, and architectural changes. They present patient evidence rather than sacred certainty. Still, the physical sequence possesses its own quiet grandeur. People began here with buildings of modest size. They rebuilt them repeatedly for centuries. The repeated act suggests that this location held unusual value long before kings covered bricks with royal claims. Perhaps beginnings are recognized slowly, a little distance away. You imagine a burial ground where the dead rest within mud brick enclosures. Household grief enters the same earth that supports the growing sanctuary. A mother mourns a child. An elder is laid down with familiar objects. A generation vanishes, while younger hands continue shaping bricks for a place already remembered as old. The city becomes an archive without shelves. Its graves hold family memory, Its foundations hold ritual memory, its discarded bowls hold meals, offerings, and daily work. Its rebuilding holds a conviction repeated across centuries: this ground matters. No single tablet must explain that faith. The mound itself speaks through accumulated labour. There is an appealingly unusual object associated with the early settlement, a small clay model of a boat found at Eridu. It carries a place for a mast and fittings suggesting control upon the water. It is no magical vessel gliding between worlds, only a crafted image from a community intimately familiar with travel through channels and marshes. Yet held in your palm, it becomes tender evidence of a city whose earliest pathways were made upon water. Even sacred beginnings needed boats. Modern enthusiasts sometimes look toward Eridu and imagine a sealed chamber beneath the deepest temple, filled with records carried from a vanished age. The mound encourages such dreams because its buildings descend layer upon layer, each older structure lying hidden beneath later devotion. No recovered chamber has proved the existence of a forbidden divine library. What archaeology reveals is quieter and more convincing. People continually return to one sacred location, preserving its authority through rebuilding. Researchers still debate how Eridu should be described within the formation of urban life. Some emphasize its extraordinary religious continuity and its very early settlement history. Others caution that no single city can simply be crowned the birthplace of civilization, since communities across southern Mesopotamia developed through exchange, rivalry, migration, and shared experimentation. Tradition names Eridu first. Archaeology confirms its remarkable age. While leaving the wider story complex, the sun descends lower, turning the broken surfaces amber. From the crest of the mound, you gaze across land that no longer resembles the watery world supporting its earliest inhabitants. Shorelines shifted, channels changed, marshes withdrew or moved. Dynasties vanished, languages altered. The sacred centre, once surrounded by offerings and footsteps, now stands open to wind, birds, and the patient examination of strangers. Yet Eridu does not feel empty. A city chosen as the first seat of kingship carries an atmosphere larger than its ruins. A sanctuary rebuilt upon older sanctuaries creates the impression of a downward staircase, each level approaching a belief more ancient and more difficult to name. Beneath the latest foundations lie earlier rooms. Beneath those lie simpler walls. Beneath the simplest walls lies sand upon which someone first decided that this was a proper place to approach the divine. You place your foot upon the warm ground. Nothing opens. No secret door turns beneath your weight. No blue light rises from a buried chamber. Only wind crosses the bricks, carrying a faint scent of salt and dust across the quiet mound. Still, the city nearest beginnings offers its own revelation. The first library may not have been written upon tablets at all. It may have been written through place, a shrine renewed until it became ancient, a water god honoured where land seemed uncertain, a city remembered as first because generations chose to keep returning there, building their questions upon the same sacred ground. Night begins to gather over Eridu. The broken temple darkens beneath the first stars, and the old city keeps its earliest wisdom where it always rested. Deep within the patient layers of earth, section 14, a broken tablet rests beneath a circle of soft museum light. Its edges are jagged, the missing pieces leaving pale absences where sentences once continued. Across the surviving clay, wedges still march in careful rows, pressed by a hand confident that the words deserved endurance. Then the surface ends suddenly. A god begins to speak, but his command is gone. A city prepares for ceremony, but the purpose is missing. A secret is mentioned, perhaps, and the clay breaks exactly where curiosity begins to ache. You lean closer to the glass. The fragment is not dramatic in appearance. It resembles a piece of fired earth recovered from an abandoned hearth. Yet it carries a peculiar power, because it refuses completion. A whole text invites reading, A broken text invites imagining. The mind bends toward the missing area instinctively, trying to rebuild what the earth has withheld. Ancient Mesopotamian literature often reaches modern eyes in this wounded form. Tablets split beneath collapsed walls, scatter through disturbed soil, or survive only through later copies made by scribes in distant cities. Scholars at the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Oxford have spent generations comparing fragments, identifying repeated lines, restoring damaged compositions, and deciding where certainty ends. The task resembles listening through a storm. One fragment preserves a name, another, excavated far away, contains several matching lines. A third carries an ending absent from both. Their clay may differ in colour, shape, and century. Yet their words reveal that scribes were copying a shared composition. Slowly, with patient comparison, a hymn or tale begins to regain its outline. Not all gaps can be closed. You enter a storeroom filled with shallow trays. Each tray holds fragments wrapped, numbered, and set apart with almost ceremonial care. Some pieces show only 3 signs. Some hold a corner, an edge, or a single line continuing into emptiness. The room smells of paper labels as dry clay, wooden shelving, and the faint chill of controlled air. There is no incense here, yet the quiet feels respectful. A curator lifts one fragment beneath a lamp. The broken surface reveals the thickness of the tablet. Its inner clay is lighter than its outer face, protected from smoke, handling, and age. Upon the written side, a sentence concerns a temple, a ruler, or a divine action. Half its meaning remains unavailable. The missing portion may lie in another tray, another museum, another excavation storehouse, or nowhere at all. Clay can outlive kingdoms. It cannot promise wholeness. The damage begins early. A tablet may crack while drying. It may be discarded when outdated, broken when an archive is cleared, crushed beneath falling brick, scattered when ancient builders reused debris, or carried away by people seeking something valuable among ruins. Centuries later, excavators discover pieces whose original neighbours have travelled into entirely different fates. One line may rest in Baghdad, another may sit in London, a third may have dissolved during a rainy season when no one knew it mattered. That is how sacred narratives reach you, not as perfect voices descending through clean darkness, but as interrupted speech. The gods speak through chipped edges. Kings rule across vanished columns. Hymns praise temples whose descriptions stop at the moment their most mysterious rooms might have appeared. There is a gentle cruelty in this. The fragments rarely break according to your convenience. They preserve long passages about offerings, titles, and formal greetings, then lose the single line that might explain an unusual image. You receive the ceremonial procession, the bright garments, the vessels of beer, the music, and the divine arrival. The tablet then crumbles precisely where a modern listener longs for whispered instruction. Perhaps ancient clay possessed a dry sense of humour. Among early discoveries from Mesopotamia, broken tablets were sometimes separated during the movement of antiquities into collections across different countries. Later scholars have occasionally recognized pieces of the same original tablet resting far apart, joining photographs, casts, or the fragments themselves to recover lost sentences. A piece once considered insignificant can suddenly become essential when its wedges complete a damaged name or restore a missing action. A fragment can spend a century waiting for its partner. That detail has inspired a more imaginative suspicion. Some mystery seekers suggest that important tablets were deliberately separated because their full reading would reveal forbidden teachings, suppressed histories, or secrets about divine visitors. It is an appealing story, especially in a world already filled with damaged texts and missing portions. Yet the ordinary causes of fragmentation are painfully abundant. Collapsed buildings, ancient discard, early collecting practices, incomplete excavation records, erosion, war, theft, and the simple violence of time. Accident can imitate conspiracy very convincingly. Still, the absence matters. When a text describes divine wisdom but loses its conclusion, you cannot pretend the missing clay says nothing. Neither can you claim it says exactly what imagination desires. The disciplined reader must remain within that uncomfortable space. Something existed there. Something was written. Its loss is real. Its content is not available merely because the silence feels suggestive. You move between trays while the lamps shine upon hundreds of unfinished statements. A hymn begins with praise and loses its central image. A ritual instruction preserves materials but not the action performed with them. A myth names an object received from a god, while the explanation of its purpose falls into a break. Each fragment is both evidence and warning. It tells you a story survived. It tells you the story is damaged. Researchers continue to disagree about how strongly missing passages should shape interpretations of ancient belief. Some prefer cautious reconstruction, allowing only parallels from secure copies to fill damaged lines. Others consider broader literary patterns, ritual traditions, and historical context when proposing what a missing portion may have contained. The debate is necessary because reconstruction can rescue meaning, but it can also create a polished illusion where certainty never existed. The hidden chamber is easiest to build inside a gap. You feel this as evening gathers beyond the museum windows. A complete tablet may disappoint extravagant hopes by speaking plainly of barley, offerings, or praise. A broken tablet protects possibility. Its missing lines can hold anything the listener fears or longs to discover. Lost knowledge, a secret name, a warning concealed by priests, a record of a world human beings were never meant to inherit. The broken surface becomes a doorway, because it cannot close the door itself. Yet fragments also offer a different kind of wonder. They reveal devotion without completion. A scribe once copied these words carefully, perhaps from an older tablet already worn at the edges. He shaped each wedge while believing the composition mattered. He may have worked by lamplight, with dust upon his robe and cramped fingers pressed against cool clay. He could not know that only a corner of his labour would remain legible to distant strangers. Still, the corner remains. You stop before a fragment carrying the final portion of a line. Several words can be read, followed by a broken edge. The sentence seems to turn towards something concealed, stored, or protected, although its exact meaning resists certainty. For a moment, the missing clay feels louder than the surviving signs. Then the silence softens. Ancient archives do not need to be complete to unsettle you. Their damage is part of their truth. Whole libraries once existed in rooms where scribes worked, officials counted, priests recited, and students copied. Most of those rooms have fallen away. Most tablets are lost, unread, shattered, or still buried beneath places no careful hand has reached. What remains is not the full inheritance. It is the small portion that escaped disappearance. A lamp clicks faintly above the glass case. The fragment lies quietly within its mount, carrying its surviving signs with patient dignity. It offers no proof of forbidden shells or deliberately hidden revelations. It offers something quieter, the knowledge that human memory has always depended upon fragile surfaces and fortunate survival. The clay ends. The question does not, and within the missing lines, the imagined library grows vast enough to contain every secret that time has chosen not to return. A narrow staircase descends into a temple building lit by 3 small lamps. The walls close around you, made from mud brick smoothed by plaster and repeated human touch. Beneath your hand, the surface feels cool, slightly rough, and dry as old bread. From somewhere overhead comes the muted life of the city, footsteps, a goat calling, the splash of water poured into a jar, and the low murmur of people arranging offerings. At the bottom waits a room of tablets. They lie in baskets, on shelves, inside storage niches, and upon benches prepared for sorting. Some are administrative accounts, bearing columns of numbers and commodities. Some preserve hymns, rituals, royal praises, omens, legal exercises, or lists of learned words. Some carry only a few hurried lines, the ancient equivalent of a note placed where a colleague might find it. This library is real. Its clay can be excavated, cleaned, studied, compared, and placed beneath careful light. Scholars connected with the University of Pennsylvania uncovered extensive tablet collections at Nippur, including literary compositions, school exercises, administrative documents, and religious texts. Such discoveries reveal human beings storing the knowledge required by their institutions, professions, worship, and education. Yet the tablets in the room do not quite explain the larger idea. The people who wrote them imagined that certain decisions existed at a level beyond their shelves. A human archive could record grain issued, land granted, hymns recited, and duties performed. A divine record could establish who possessed kingship, which city received favour, which power ruled the storm, and what fate might unfold upon the earth. One archive remembers, the other decides. You walk between baskets where clay tablets lean against one another like quiet bricks. Each object is small, useful, and vulnerable. It requires a trained reader. It can be misfiled, broken, lost, or buried beneath a roof collapse. Its authority depends upon officials, witnesses, scribes, and institutions willing to accept what its wedges record. A divine tablet carries another kind of force. Across Mesopotamian religious traditions, gods may possess tablets associated with destinies, decrees, or the rightful ordering of the world. These objects are not simply books describing events already completed. They represent authority itself. Whoever possesses such a record does not merely read the pattern of existence. That being may hold the right to determine, command, or confirm it. The idea changes the room around you. A basket of clay accounts suddenly seems like a faint imitation of something immense. The temple staff count sheep because divine order values offerings. They record fields because sacred institutions claim land. They preserve ritual word because correct speech maintains proper relations with unseen powers. The tablets do not rival the heavenly archive. They imitate it in small, earthly gestures. The distinction is almost uncomfortable. Human beings write because memory fails. They need proof because trust can break. They list supplies because jars empty. Animals wander, and officials occasionally develop creative explanations for missing goods. The gods, by contrast, are imagined as possessing records not because they forget, but because written order expresses lasting command. In that difference lies the library beneath the library. The upper collection contains the texts human hands can touch. The deeper collection contains the principles humans believe their world obeys. It does not need a physical doorway under the temple floor. It exists in the language of sacred authority, in the thought that events upon earth have already been measured against decisions held elsewhere. An attendant carries a tablet into the room, wrapped inside a clay covering. The outer layer bears seal impressions and a short identification. Within it, protected from all alteration, rests another tablet containing the transaction itself. Such clay envelopes were used in Mesopotamia to secure agreements, allowing the outer covering to remain closed unless a dispute required the inner record to be examined. A truth could be sealed inside another truth, protected by a shell of fired mud. The custom is wonderfully strange. It is also revealing. Even earthly records may possess surfaces and interiors, what can be inspected at once and what must remain closed until proper cause demands opening. A sealed tablet is not forbidden knowledge, yet it teaches the imagination a familiar lesson. Important words are often protected. Access is never completely casual. Now magnify that thought into sacred scale. A divine record of destiny would not be opened by a curious visitor wandering through a temple corridor. It would belong to the divine assembly, to the great powers whose decisions stand above the anxieties of ordinary lives. A farmer may ask for water, a mother may pray for a child, a ruler may seek victory, yet the record determining favour remains beyond them, held in the hidden language of heaven. A lamp sputters against the wall, the shadows shift, and for an instant the shelves seem to extend farther than the room allows. You picture another collection resting behind the visible tablets, not made from ordinary clay, not requiring baskets or labels, and not awaiting a scholar with a brush. It contains the invisible arrangements behind harvests, storms, marriages, kingships, sickness, cities, and the rise and fading of human plans. Such a library would not be pleasant to read. It might tell a person not only what may be gained, but what cannot be escaped. It might hold the name of a city that will prosper, beside the name of another that will be abandoned. It might contain the limits of a ruler's pride, the length of a dynasty, the failure of a field, or the moment when a beloved voice becomes a memory. Perhaps forbidden knowledge is forbidden through mercy. Fringe storytellers have sometimes imagined that clay tablets describing heavenly records must conceal evidence of an actual secret repository, containing scientific instruction, maps of vanished lands, or machinery belonging to divine visitors. The excavated collections do not support that claim. Their mystery is more inward and more ancient. They show communities that understood writing as a reflection of power, and sacred writing as a reflection of the power governing existence itself. Researchers continue to debate how literally people pictured divine tablets and heavenly decrees. Some view them as poetic expressions of fate and legitimate rule, made vivid through familiar scribal practice. Others argue that written culture shaped religious imagination so deeply that tablets could be experienced as real instruments of divine administration. The gods ruled as great household masters, great judges, and great keepers of records. Because those were forms of authority people already understood, the lamps now burn lower. An archivist closes a basket with a fitted lid, then presses a lump of clay against its fastening. His seal rolls across the surface, leaving figures frozen in miniature procession. The tablets are stored. The room grows still. Outside, evening settles over roofs, courtyards, canals, and temple gates. Nothing here glitters. The earthly library rests in baskets and dark niches, filled with the labour of scribes who manage the demands of worship and city life. Its tablets can be found, translated, are catalogued, and understood through patience. Yet beneath the idea of every human record lies a deeper conviction, almost too vast to hold comfortably in thought. Somewhere, the true pattern is already written, not the deliveries of barley, nor the lists of singers, nor the duties owed by a field. Something larger, the order behind all order, the invisible document by which gods know what human beings can only endure. You rise from the cool room and place one hand upon the staircase wall. Above, the city continues breathing beneath stars already appearing in the dark sky. Below, clay tablets sleep inside their baskets, protected by seals, roofs, and silence. The human archive can be opened. The divine archive remains closed, and perhaps that is why its imagined shelves seem endless. Torchlight trembles across carved stone walls. You enter Nineveh through a palace passageway where the air is cooler than the streets outside. Beyond the doorway, the capital of Assyria spreads beside the Tigris River, crowded with officials, soldiers, craftsmen, messengers, animals, markets, gardens, and the measured movement of imperial power. This is not a marsh settlement rising gently into sacred memory. This is a royal city conscious of its reach, gathering tribute and information from lands far beyond its walls. Yet inside the palace, the greatest conquest is quiet. Clay tablets fill rooms reserved for learned work. Some rest upon shelves. Others stand inside containers, arranged by subject or copied for royal use. Their signs concern medicine, rituals, omens, celestial observation, incantations, royal history, dictionaries, prayers, myths, and ancient stories already venerable when Assyrian scribes touched them. The collection belongs to Ashurbanipal. He rules Assyria during the 7th century before Christ. From a city adorned with reliefs showing victories, processions, hunts, and the discipline of empire. A visitor encountering those carved walls might expect a king interested only in weapons, tribute, and conquered enemies. Yet Ashurbanipal presents himself as something rarer among rulers. He claims the education of a scribe and takes pride in understanding difficult written learning. A king who reads is still a king. His interest in knowledge is not gentle curiosity alone. In Nineveh, written learning becomes royal equipment. Omens may warn of danger. Rituals may guard the king from threatening signs. Medical texts may guide healers within the palace. Historical accounts may instruct officials in patterns of rebellion, punishment, loyalty, and divine favour. Myths may preserve the deepest language through which a civilization explains its place beneath the gods. Knowledge protects the throne. You pass into a chamber where two scribes work beneath hanging lamps. One holds an older tablet, worn at its edges, perhaps brought from a temple centre farther south. The other presses a fresh copy into clay. His fingers move carefully because the language may be difficult, the signs archaic, and the text precious. He does not create the composition, he rescues it from the vulnerability of a single surviving witness. A line is read, a line is copied, a vanished voice enters a new century. The British Museum preserves more than 30,000 tablets and fragments discovered among the ruins of Nineveh, associated with the royal collections assembled under Ashurbanipal. Those clay pieces include learned writings inherited from the wider traditions of Mesopotamia. The collection is therefore more than an Assyrian achievement. It is a gathering place for memories born in older cities, older sanctuaries, and languages that required disciplined study even in the king's own age. Sumer is present here as an echo. Its language no longer fills streets as ordinary conversation. No market woman calls across a courtyard using the speech of the first written hymns. No child learns it casually beside a cooking fire. Yet within scholarly chambers, Sumerian remains alive through signs, word lists, prayers, rituals, compositions, and explanations preserved because trained people consider them worthy of attention. A dead language can still command a room. One scribe recites a difficult passage while another checks a lexical list, seeking the proper meaning of an unfamiliar sign. The work is slow. Perhaps a line has been copied incorrectly in an older version. Perhaps a broken edge has removed the expected word. Perhaps two traditions preserve differing forms, forcing the scholars to choose which reading deserves the royal copy. There is nothing sleepy about accurate copying. A mistake in a pleasant tale may produce embarrassment. A mistake in ritual instruction, ominous interpretation, or protective ceremony may trouble a royal court already nervous about eclipses, illnesses, enemies, and unsettling dreams. The learned men serving Ashurbanipal are not simply librarians arranging handsome collections. They are guardians of usable knowledge in a palace where uncertainty is treated seriously. The library smells of dry clay and cedar shelving. A servant enters carrying a tablet wrapped carefully in cloth. A label identifies the work for the scholars waiting beside a lamp. It may have arrived from a temple archive, borrowed for copying under royal command. The original city has guarded it through generations, and now the imperial court wishes to possess its words as well. There is admiration in this gathering. There is also pressure. A king who requests ancient learning does not ask like an ordinary neighbour hoping to borrow a recipe tablet until the next festival. Royal desire carries officials, messengers, seals, authority, and consequences. Texts enter Nineveh because the court values them, but also because the court has the strength to make distant centres surrender copies, originals, or access to their learned inheritance. A library can be built through reverence. It can also be built through power. One peculiar detail gives the palace collection an almost personal voice. Some tablets contain written statements identifying them as possessions of Ashurbanipal, king of the world, king of Assyria. The text itself may concern an ancient ritual or scholarly series, but the tablet also declares its destination and owner. Knowledge has been collected, stamped with royal presence, and folded into the identity of the throne. Even wisdom receives a palace label. Fringe storytellers sometimes suggest that Ashurbanipal gathered the collection because he sought a hidden original record. perhaps a secret account of beings who instructed humanity before ordinary kings arose. Such stories turn the palace into a vault of revelations deliberately concealed from later ages. The surviving tablets offer no proof of a forbidden master volume. They reveal something more historically grounded and almost equally compelling, a king assembling the broadest learned traditions available to strengthen his rule and preserve prestigious antiquity. Researchers continue to discuss the exact character of Ashurbanipal's collection. Was it a library in the modern sense, organized for sustained consultation across many fields? Was it a group of palace and temple collections serving rituals, divination, scholarship, and government? How many tablets were commissioned as copies, and how many entered through political coercion or warfare? The fragments are numerous, but the original arrangement remains only partly recoverable. The uncertainty suits Nineveh. In one room, a scholar studies the movement of heavenly signs. In another, an incantation is prepared against unseen harm. Elsewhere, a copied myth carries ancient gods through events whose first telling lies beyond recovery. The palace does not separate literature, religion, prediction, healing, and royal survival into comfortable modern categories. All forms of knowledge may serve the ruler who possesses them. Outside, the empire appears immovable. Guards patrol gateways, horses stamp inside royal stables, messengers arrive with reports from distant provinces. Sculpted warriors march forever across stone panels, conquering enemies who can never escape their carved defeat. Above them rise palace roofs filled with cedar beams, painted surfaces, and rooms containing the written memory of the lands now required to acknowledge Assyrian authority. Then Casus, destruction comes to Nineveh. The palace burns, beams fall, rooms collapse beneath ash, brick, and violence. The royal centre that collected knowledge with such confidence fails to protect itself from history. Wax writing boards vanish, wooden fittings disappear. Carefully arranged spaces become confused ruins. Clay remains. Fire that devours the palace hardens many tablets within it. The collection loses its royal reeds, its shelves, its order, and its living purpose. Yet fragments endure beneath fallen architecture until excavators lift them into another world, where scholars begin the slow work of reading what imperial ruin accidentally protected. You stand among the silent rooms as imagined smoke fades into night. Ashurbanipal gathered ancient learning to serve power, security, prestige, and perhaps personal fascination. He could not know that his defeated palace would preserve voices far older than his empire, carrying them beyond Assyria into a future unable to rebuild their original homes. The king sought possession of memory. Instead, memory survived him. And within the fallen library of Nineveh, the oldest sacred traditions remain like quiet lamps buried under ash, still glowing faintly for anyone patient enough to read their clay. The first sound is not a prayer. It is the groan of labour beneath a sky without comfort, where divine workers bend into the earth and raise heavy baskets from deep canal trenches. Their hands are stained with clay. Their shoulders ache beneath loads of wet soil. Around them, water must be guided into fields, embankments strengthened, channels cleared, and the difficult foundations of an ordered world maintained. Even the gods are tired. You stand at the edge of a half-finished canal while moonlight catches upon the dark water. Mud grips your sandals, cool and stubborn. Reed torches burn beside the excavation, filling the damp air with smoke and bitter resin. Along the bank, exhausted figures set down their tools, no longer willing to continue the endless work assigned to them. Their complaint rises into the night. In the Sumerian composition commonly known as Enki and Nineveh, preserved through tablets studied by specialists at the University of Oxford, the gods are burdened by work until a plan is formed. A mother goddess is called upon to create human beings from clay, allowing humanity to take up the labour that has weighed upon divine shoulders. The thought arrives gently, then settles heavily. Human beings are not first imagined as kings of the world. nor as curious explorers wandering freely beneath a welcoming sun. They appear within a problem of work. The canals require digging, the land requires tending, divine order requires maintenance. Someone must shoulder the baskets, prepare offerings, keep fields watered, and preserve the structures upon which abundance depends. You kneel beside the canal bank and touch the clay. It is soft beneath your fingers, shaped by water and pressure. This is the same substance from which walls rise. Jars are formed, tablets receive signs, and fields produce grain when properly irrigated. To imagine a human body formed from clay is not to imagine something worthless. Clay is humble, certainly, but it is also useful beyond measure. It becomes whatever disciplined hands persuade it to become. A human figure begins to take shape, not carved from precious blue stone, and not hammered from shining metal. The body is fashioned from the ordinary substance beneath every footstep. Arms, shoulders, chest, face, and hands emerge from wet earth. Breath enters, eyes open. The first human presence stands upon ground that resembles its own flesh, created for a purpose both necessary and troubling. The gods may rest. You hear water flowing steadily through the finished channel. Fields beyond the bank darken with moisture, prepared for planting. In time, grain will rise there, green at first, then gold beneath summer heat. Bread will be baked, beer will be poured, offerings will be lifted towards sanctuaries. The arrangement appears peaceful when viewed from a shaded courtyard with a full cup. From the canal trench, it looks different. The story gives human labour a sacred importance, but it also gives labour a burdened beginning. People work because the world of the gods desires relief. Their muscles become part of a divine solution. Their hunger keeps them returning to fields and storehouses. Their offerings rise upward, while their days remain tied to soil, heat, illness, family obligation, and the demanding rhythm of survival. This is not a flattering origin tale. It is an honest one in its own unsettling manner. Ancient city dwellers knew that life depended upon exhausting tasks performed repeatedly. Canals filled with silt, mud brick walls eroded, grain required harvesting, threshing, measuring, storing, grinding, and baking. Animals needed feeding, cloth needed weaving. The temples required offerings, households required care. No civilization rested upon wishes alone. Work held the world together. A council decree proves nothing about divine creation, yet administrative records from the river cities reveal just how heavily institutions relied upon organized labor. Men and women appear through rations, textile production, canal maintenance, herding, milling, transport, and food preparation. The tablets preserve an urban society whose achievements rose through countless human tasks, most of them repetitive, necessary, and largely uncelebrated. The creation story gives those workers a place in the cosmos. That place is not simple comfort. To say humanity was created for service can elevate labor as sacred duty, while also making social burden seem natural and permanent. A ruler may find such an idea useful. A temple may find it reassuring. A tired worker, receiving barley after a day beneath the sun, may have listened with feelings difficult for any tablet to preserve. Perhaps pride and resentment live together. You imagine a woman grinding grain in a shaded courtyard. The stone turns beneath her hands with a rough, regular sound. A child sleeps nearby, wrapped loosely against the warmth. Her labour feeds a household, supports offerings, and participates in the order praised by priests and rulers. Yet her wrists still hurt. Sacred purpose does not make the grinding stone lighter. Nearby, a man clears weeds from a canal edge. He knows that water neglects no opportunity for disorder. A broken bank can ruin young crops. A blocked channel can leave a field dry beneath a merciless sky. He may understand his task as necessary, even honourable. Still, When evening comes and his back tightens painfully, he is unlikely to feel entirely grateful for humanity's grand appointment as keeper of the divine estate. There is a strange fringe belief that clay creation stories preserve a distant memory of deliberate biological design, with gods shaping a labouring species for practical use. Such interpretations often turn poetic bodies of mud into laboratories and divine intention into technical engineering. The tablets do not provide that evidence. What they do provide is more intimate, an ancient fear that human purpose may be inseparable from service to powers far above ordinary life. That fear remains recognizable. Why are you here? Is your worth found in what you produce, whom you serve, what you preserve, or what you understand? Does labour grant meaning, or does meaning merely make labour easier to bear? The clay figure standing beside the canal cannot answer. Its hands are already being prepared for tools. Scholars continue to debate how creation traditions reflected real social arrangements within Mesopotamia. Some read these stories as sacred explanations for temple economy and the dependence of cities upon collective labour. Others emphasize their theological depth, noting that service to the gods also offered human beings a dignified role within an ordered universe. The same tale can sound like oppression from one doorway and belonging from another. The moon climbs higher. Workers leave the canal in small groups, their baskets empty, their steps slow. Water continues all along the channel, entering dark fields with a soft whisper. At the temple, fresh bread and beer are arranged for offering, their fragrance rising through lamplight toward an unseen recipient. You remain beside the clay bank. Humanity has entered the sacred account not as an accidental visitor, but as a necessary worker within the design. Created from common earth, people carry burdens that allow cities, temples, harvests, songs, and written memory to endure. Their service may be imposed, their dignity may be real. The two possibilities do not cancel one another. Perhaps that is the quiet discomfort hidden within the older stories. The gods possess wisdom. The gods possess order. Human beings receive the work required to keep that order alive. And beneath the stars, with mud upon their hands, they begin the long task of discovering whether service is their prison, their purpose, or something too deeply woven into life to be separated at all. A reading room settles into silence beneath green-shaded lamps. You sit at a wooden table while a curator opens a padded tray and places a small clay fragment before you. Its surface is brown, chipped, and unremarkable until the light falls across the wedges. Then the signs sharpen, lines appear. A voice shaped in an ancient city waits for the careful attention of someone willing to read slowly. Across the room, a scholar adjusts a magnifying lens. She does not begin with visions of hidden machines or visitors stepping down from brilliant vessels. She begins with grammar, damaged signs, parallel copies, old word lists, and the patient knowledge that one careless assumption can pull an entire story away from its meaning. Her work seems almost painfully modest. Yet modesty is exactly what keeps the tablet from becoming anything a restless imagination desires. Clay is generous with mystery. It is less generous with proof. During the 19th century, scholars learned to read the wedge-shaped scripts of Mesopotamia through comparison, multilingual inscriptions, and years of argument. The Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures at the University of Chicago describes this decipherment as the doorway through which Sumerian language, history, social life, and literature return to modern understanding. Cities long buried beneath mounds suddenly possessed names again. Gods regained titles, kings regained reigns, forgotten stories entered human hearing. The rediscovery was astonishing enough, yet astonishing discoveries rarely remain peaceful. Once the tablets began speaking, people wanted them to speak about everything. They wanted confirmation of familiar sacred stories, proof of vanished continents, lost sciences, secret bloodlines, cosmic visitors, and a hidden record more exciting than grain, hymns, court decisions, and the stubborn concerns of human communities. You understand the temptation. A tablet describes kingship descending from heaven. Another describes sages linked with the ancient waters. Another pictures humans formed for labor under divine authority. Sacred powers travel between gods and cities. Destiny can be written, guarded, transferred, or withheld, taken separately. These are images of religious literature, arranged in a modern pattern. They can begin to resemble a secret history waiting to be unlocked. The transformation happens quietly. A divine name becomes the title of a visiting species. A poetic journey becomes a flight from another world. A sacred ordinance becomes advanced technology. A creation story becomes a laboratory report. A missing line becomes evidence that someone removed the most revealing passage. The ancient text remains upon the table, while a newer story gathers around it like mist. Mist can be beautiful. It can also hide the ground. You walk beside shelves holding reference works, photographs, copies, and dictionaries built from countless tablets. A student nearby compares two fragments from the same composition. One preserves a damaged divine name. The other preserves a clearer spelling, allowing the reading to become more secure. Nothing glows, no alarm sounds. Yet a genuine piece of the ancient world has become slightly more intelligible. This is how knowledge returns. The ordinary process appears disappointing only when compared with promises of total revelation. In truth, translation is a delicate form of resurrection. A sign misunderstood can turn a god into an object, a city into a person, or an offering into an action never performed. Scholars must account for spelling changes, damaged surfaces, copied errors, and meanings that shift across centuries. The tablet asks for patience, not surrender. The Inanna gods, often called the Anunnaki in later forms of Mesopotamian tradition, appear within religious texts as a group of divine powers. They belong to stories of authority, judgment, cosmic assembly, and sacred order. The tablets do not identify them as engineers arriving from another planet to mine treasure, or construct humanity through scientific procedure. Those ideas come from modern reinterpretations, shaped long after the scribes had vanished, yet the old names remain powerful. Speak them softly in a darkened room, and they carry the sound of secrecy. Place them beside stars, flooded cities, deep waters, and enormous rains, and the mind begins making pathways. Human beings are natural pattern makers. It is one reason they build stories as constellations, archives, rituals, and theories. A scattering of bright points invites a shape. Not every shape belongs to the sky. A particularly curious chapter in modern fascination began when ancient flood tablets captured public attention. George Smith, working among fragments later associated with the royal collection at Nineveh, identified a Mesopotamian flood story during the 19th century. The British Museum records that his public announcement attracted enormous interest because the tablets seemed to echo a flood tradition already familiar to many listeners. The reaction is easy to imagine. An old story believed unique suddenly acquires a companion from buried clay. The ground appears to open beneath comfortable history. Readers begin to wonder what else may wait in fragments. That wonder can lead toward careful study, or toward claims built far beyond the evidence. Sometimes it travels toward both at once. The library of the gods is especially vulnerable to this hunger. Its imagined contents can answer questions the broken tablets cannot. Why did civilization arise? Why do distant stories sometimes resemble one another? Why are human lives shaped by labor and loss? Why does knowledge feel both liberating and dangerous? A forbidden archive offers the most attractive reply. Someone already knows, and the truth was deliberately kept from you. It is a compelling idea. It is also a difficult one to demonstrate. A fringe claim may begin with an accurate detail, such as an ancient god associated with wisdom, water, or heavenly authority. It then adds a conclusion not stated upon the tablet. If challenged, it points toward broken passages, lost archives, and untranslated fragments as protection. The missing evidence becomes evidence of concealment. The argument closes itself like a sealed jar. Scholars cannot work that way. They must allow uncertainty to remain uncertainty. A damaged passage may conceal something surprising, or it may continue a formula appearing elsewhere in familiar language. An unusual number may express sacred time, political ideology, scribal calculation, or a meaning not yet securely understood. The honest answer can sound less thrilling than a confident whisper about hidden beings, but honesty preserves the actual mystery. The real tablets are strange enough. They reveal people who understood civilization as dependent upon sacred powers. They reveal rulers seeking legitimacy through heavenly descent. They reveal scribes copying compositions older than their own kingdoms. They reveal gods who manage water, craft, birth, judgment, conflict, and abundance. They reveal humanity shaped from earth and placed within a difficult world of service. No visitor from the stars is required for unease. You return to the clay fragment beneath the lamp. Its wedges remain quiet, neither confirming impossible claims nor dismissing the ache that gives rise to them. Something ancient truly is present. A mind once shaped these lines within a world where gods, cities, work, knowledge, and fate stood close together. That world differs from yours, yet its questions remain disturbingly familiar. Researchers continue to argue over the proper boundary between myth, social memory, ritual meaning, and historical reflection. A sacred tale may preserve anxieties born from real floods, political rivalries, institutional labor, or reverence for learned authority. It can contain memory without becoming a newspaper account. It can contain truth without becoming technical description. The distinction asks for restraint. Outside the reading room, evening darkens the windows until they reflect the lamps within. Shelves rise behind you, holding publications filled with careful disagreement. Before you lies one small tablet, damaged yet stubbornly present. It does not hand you a forbidden history. It does something quieter. It reminds you that hidden truth is not always the most spectacular claim. Sometimes it is the realization that ancient people looked upon their own civilization with suspicion and wonder. They questioned where knowledge came from, who controlled it, and why human life had been placed beneath such burdens. Their tablets do not solve the mystery. They reveal that the mystery was already haunting them. A brush moves across clay with the softness of breath. You sit inside an excavation workroom as evening settles beyond the open doorway. Outside, the desert cools beneath a violet sky. Inside, trays of objects cover long tables, each marked with numbers written in careful ink. Small pottery pieces, stone weights, seal impressions, and tablet fragments lie separated by cloth, labels, and the discipline required when the earth begins surrendering its memory. No object announces its importance. A tablet fragment the size of a coin may restore the name of an official. A seal impression may identify an administrative office. A small group of tablets found together may reveal whether a room served as a school, a storeroom, a temple office, or a private household. The meaning does not rise from a single dramatic discovery. It forms slowly through location, comparison, handwriting, vocabulary, and context. The hidden truth arrives quietly. A conservator moistens nothing, forces nothing, and guesses nothing. Loose soil leaves the tablet under gentle movement, revealing wedge marks pressed into clay when the city still carried voices through its streets. The signs are not bright. They are not mysterious symbols invented for modern excitement. They are writing, practical and deliberate, waiting for trained eyes. This is what the sands truly yield. Archaeologists have uncovered vast numbers of Mesopotamian tablets from houses, temples, palaces, schools, and administrative quarters. Scholars at the University of Chicago have shown through excavated archives that written records entered daily life through contracts, accounts, letters, legal decisions, lexical exercises, omens, prayers, and literature. The tablets confirm that ancient cities depended upon writing with a seriousness difficult to overstate. People counted because survival required counting. They wrote because memory alone could not manage a city. You watch a specialist turn a fragment beneath a low lamp. She studies the angle of the wedges, the shape of the tablet, and the surviving sequence of signs. Her eyes do not widen with sudden revelation. Her pencil moves carefully across a notebook, recording what can be established, and leaving blank what cannot yet be read. That restraint feels almost sacred. The secure evidence is remarkable enough. The clay confirms that Sumerian communities created elaborate institutions, cultivated fields through irrigation, worshipped powerful gods, trained scribes, maintained archives, developed profound literature, and imagined divine authority governing the ordering of life. It confirms that sacred narratives placed wisdom, kingship, human purpose, and destiny within a world watched by powers greater than human ambition. The clay does not confirm a forbidden room containing supernatural books. It does not reveal a sealed catalogue of divine technology. It does not prove that gods walked as visitors from distant stars, leaving instructions for a species designed to serve them. No verified excavation has uncovered such a library beneath a Sumerian temple, untouched and complete, waiting with answers to every troubled question. The absence feels both disappointing and strangely relieving. A complete solution would make the ancient world smaller. It would turn poems, rituals, fears, prayers, and images into a single solved mechanism. Mystery would become inventory. The patient unease of clay would be reduced to a headline, a display case, and perhaps a gift shop reproduction with rather unfortunate lettering. Instead, the tablets remain difficult. They carry certainties without surrendering all meaning. A temple archive can be demonstrated. A hymn to a goddess of writing can be translated. A flood narrative can be reconstructed from surviving signs. A list of sacred powers can be read with scholarly care. Yet the inward experience of those who compose such texts remains only partly recoverable. What did a scribe feel while writing a divine name? Did he believe heaven possessed a record more perfect than his own? Did an ordinary worker hear creation tales as honor, burden, or both? Did a temple singer imagine divine wisdom as poetic grandeur, literal sacred possession, or a truth too natural to require distinction? Clay preserves the words. It does not preserve every tremor of belief. In a corner of the room, a tray contains several tablets bearing impressions of fingertips. One shows a shallow curve where a thumb steadied wet clay. Another carries the uneven pressure of a hurried line. Such marks are small, almost private. They do not explain theology or reveal secret chambers, yet they prove something no extravagant theory can improve upon. A living person was here. That hand belonged to someone who ate bread, disliked discomfort, worried about duties, heard music, saw stars as to stars, and inhabited a world filled with divine presence. He may have copied a hymn with reverence. He may have recorded rations while longing for supper. He may have feared illness, hoped for favor, and wondered whether the gods kept knowledge unavailable to people like him. His questions need not match yours exactly. His unease may still reach you. There is a curious modern practice among enthusiasts who search photographs of tablets for signs resembling unusual diagrams, maps, flying objects, or mechanical plans. A damaged wedge, cracked edge, or seal design can become the center of elaborate explanation. Most such interpretations collapse when trained readers identify ordinary signs, familiar images, or damage produced through age. Still, the impulse is revealing. People keep looking for a picture of the impossible, because written uncertainty feels harder to hold. An image promises recognition, a text demands patience. Historians continue to debate how myths interacted with political ambition, temple authority, environmental memory, and ordinary emotion. Some emphasize how sacred narratives justified cities, rulers, and institutional labor. Others consider how storytelling expressed genuine wonder concerning creation. disaster, skill, justice, and death. These approaches do not require choosing between cynical invention and simple belief. Human beings can use stories for power while also being deeply moved by them. You glance through the doorway. The mound outside lies dark beneath a rising moon. It contains walls not yet uncovered, rooms collapsed into soil, objects too fragile to survive, and tablets perhaps resting inches beyond the last excavated trench. Some may carry receipts. Some may preserve names absent from every catalogue. One might restore lines of a composition now damaged almost beyond recognition. Expectation must remain modest. Wonder does not have to be. The forbidden library of the gods begins to change shape within your mind. It no longer needs to be an underground hall sealed by priests or hidden by catastrophe. It may be the name given to a human longing, the desire to believe that the scattered conditions of life belong to a concealed pattern. Birth, labour, learning, authority, grief, flood, survival, and memory seem less lonely when imagined as entries within a record greater than any individual life. Perhaps ancient writers felt something similar. They placed order in divine hands because disorder surrounded them. They imagined wisdom guarded because knowledge truly carried power. They described destiny as written because events often moved beyond human appeal. Their world demanded explanation, yet never provided enough certainty to make explanation easy. The conservator lifts the cleaned tablet gently and places it upon a padded support, under lamplight. The signs appear sharper now, their message slightly closer to recovery. It may never speak of gods. It may describe wool, grain, or a parcel of land. Even so, it belongs to the same civilization that searched the heavens, honoured wisdom, feared destruction, and shaped clay into memory. The most reliable whisper is not a spectacular secret. It is the endurance of the question. People once pressed their uncertainty into earth, and the earth kept it. Their tablets reveal no final doorway into divine knowledge. They reveal a civilization listening for that doorway, tracing its outline through sacred stories, guarded records, and the disciplined signs of human hands. The lamp burns steadily, the fragment lies silent, and within that silence, wonder survives without needing to pretend it has become proof. Night settles over the excavation trench with the patience of deep water. The last workers have climbed from the opened earth carrying brushes, boards, baskets, and folded shade cloths. Their voices fade toward a distant camp, where lanterns begin appearing like modest stars close to the ground. Within the trench, uncovered walls remain exposed beneath the darkening sky, their mud bricks softened by thousands of years, and one more day of careful attention. You stand at the edge, looking down. A doorway has been revealed in the side of a buried building. Only its lower outline can be seen, framed by bricks the colour of dried cinnamon. The room beyond remains filled with compacted soil. Nothing announces what lies inside. It may contain broken pottery, fallen roof material, ash, animal bone, or the plain remains of storage jars emptied long ago. It may contain tablets. The possibility is enough to keep your attention fixed upon that narrow entrance. Excavation proceeds slowly because the earth is not an enemy to be conquered. It is the final shelter of what survives. A careless shovel may destroy an impression that waited 4,000 years for gentle hands. A hurried conclusion may do similar damage to meaning. Above the trench, a canvas sheet rustles in the breeze. The air has cooled, carrying dust, distant cooking smoke, and the faint mineral scent of soil opened from darkness. You imagine the buried room as it once existed, not as a magical chamber, but as a place where someone entered with purpose. A servant might have brought a jar. An official might have checked a seal. A scribe might have placed down a tablet, intending to return when daylight improved. No one returned. That simple absence gives the doorway its power. A room closed by collapse is not designed as a mystery. It becomes one because time interrupts ordinary intentions. A shelf is never cleared. A tablet is never retrieved. A basket remains where a hand placed it. Human plans stop while objects continue their long descent into stillness. The British Museum team working at Girsu has shown how much can emerge from rooms once thought empty of speech. Tablets, ceilings, architecture, and ordinary records reveal the movement of provisions and officials within an ancient city. Their discoveries do not unlock a supernatural vault. They do something quieter and more trustworthy. They show that beneath anonymous sand, organized human memory can remain patiently intact. That truth carries its own kind of wonder. You have travelled through images of divine writing, sacred waters, heavenly authority, and wisdom guarded by powers larger than any human institution. Now, beside a closed room, the most honest mystery is also the simplest. Much remains buried. Some of it may alter details. Some may restore names. Some may provide new lines from a composition whose meaning has long been damaged. No one knows what the room will yield. The phrase forbidden library lingers because it names an emotion more than a location. It is the sensation that knowledge exists nearby, protected by distance, damage, language, authority, or time. It is the feeling arising when a sealed doorway appears in a trench, when a tablet loses its final lines, or when a poem places sacred understanding beyond mortal reach. You do not need certainty to feel its pull. A small owl calls from somewhere beyond the mound. Its voice is brief and hollow, swallowed almost immediately by the open night. Down inside the trench, the doorway darkens completely. It has become a rectangle of shadow, quiet and closed, with no light reaching into the packed soil beyond it. The mind offers possibilities. Perhaps the room contains only jars. Perhaps it holds records of dates, grain, fish, wool, and workers whose names will never appear in a grand story. Perhaps a school exercise waits beneath collapsed brick, copied by a young learner whose patience ended long before the lesson did. Perhaps a hymn fragment carries a divine name beside words no reader has encountered in any other surviving tablet. Perhaps nothing legible survives there. Each possibility belongs to the dignity of the place. A jar matters because someone used it. A receipt matters because someone depended upon what it recorded. A broken exercise matters because learning happened there. A hymn matters because human voices once sought language suitable for powers they could neither see nor control. The hidden truth may be scattered among ordinary things. That is the difficult lesson of ancient cities. Their greatest revelations rarely announce themselves as secrets. They arrive through accumulated fragments, through rooms filled with practical objects, through clay that records the burdens and hopes of people living beneath a world imagined as sacred. A divine library may never emerge as a single chamber, because its outline already exists wherever writing, worship, fear, and authority meet. A curious belief still circles places like this. Some visitors feel that unopened rooms should remain unopened, as though excavation risks disturbing not only objects, but an ancient silence entitled to its rest. Archaeologists do not abandon research because of such feelings, yet the impulse is understandable. Opening a buried room changes it forever. Once the first soil is removed, mystery gives way to evidence, and evidence must accept limits. Mystery is limitless only while the door stays closed. Researchers continue to debate how much ancient literature preserves genuine memory of distant social change, and how much it reshapes the past according to sacred and political needs. A city may call itself first because tradition grants it honor. A king may claim heavenly authority because rule requires more than force. A hymn may describe divine knowledge because writing itself feels astonishing within a world vulnerable to forgetting. The debate remains alive because the clay permits more than one careful question. You descend the short ladder into the trench. Each wooden rung creaks softly beneath your weight. At the bottom, the walls rise only to your knees in places, their upper courses lost to collapse and erosion. The soil beneath your feet is firm, marked by careful tools and small numbered tags. You approach the doorway, your hand almost reaches toward the brick frame, then stops. There is no reason to touch it. The ancient builders have already left enough of themselves in its shape, in the alignment of each brick, in the small threshold worn by feet whose journeys ended unimaginably long ago. Standing close is enough. From here, the dark interior appears deeper. You imagine no glittering shelves, no guarded volume opening beneath unearthly light. Instead, you imagine clay tablets resting beneath soil, each modest, each uncertain, each holding whatever its maker considered worth recording. Their power lies not in answering every question, but in surviving long enough to make questioning possible. Perhaps this is where the gods remain closest, not in a proof that closes every argument, not in a sensational claim demanding belief. They remain in the ancient habit of placing meaning beyond immediate sight, in the conviction that life is ordered by powers difficult to understand, and in the human determination to leave signs against oblivion. The doorway does not open tonight. Moonlight spreads across the trench edge, painting the upper bricks a soft grey. Far away, a lantern is extinguished. The air settles. The mound becomes part of the darkness again, holding buildings, tablets, thresholds, and innumerable small histories within its patient body. You climb back toward the surface. At the top, the horizon stretches flat and immense beneath stars that appear almost close enough to count. Somewhere below, buried rooms continue sleeping. Somewhere within human memory, sacred tablets continue resting upon divine knees, and deep waters continue hiding the principles by which the world was believed to endure. No final answer rises from the sand. There is only the quiet recognition that people long ago also lived beside unopened doors. They look toward the sky, the water, the temple, the tablet, and the fragile work of their own hands. They wondered whether knowledge had been given, guarded, lost, or only partly understood. Their questions remain warm within the clay, and perhaps the library was never forbidden because humanity was unworthy to enter it. Perhaps it remained closed because no single generation, ancient or modern, could bear its whole meaning at once. The desert night deepens without hurry. You no longer need to search the dark doorway for a sudden revelation. The earth has given enough for one quiet night. The shape of a room, the trace of a hand, the memory of cities, and the gentle knowledge that mystery does not always ask to be conquered. Sometimes it asks only to be heard. Your breathing grows slower now, matching the stillness resting across the mound. The stars remain above the plain, clear and distant, while the buried walls cool beneath the soil. Nothing is pursuing you through these ancient streets. Nothing demands an answer from you tonight. The sealed rooms can remain sealed a little longer, holding their clay, their dust, and their patient silence. You let the images soften. The doorway becomes a shadow upon warm earth. The shadow becomes a quiet room. The room becomes a simple thought resting gently at the edge of sleep. Human hands once shaped clay. Human eyes once watched lamplight. Human hearts once carried questions beneath these same stars. You are allowed to set those questions down. The waters of the old marsh move only in imagination now, calm and dark beneath a silver sky. Reeds sway quietly along the bank. A small boat rests without motion, tied safely where no current can carry it away. In a distant sanctuary, a final lamp lowers its flame until the room grows peaceful. No sacred tablet needs to be read tonight. No hidden catalogue needs to be opened. The names of gods, kings, scribes, workers, mothers, teachers, and forgotten children can settle together into the soft earth that remembered them longer than anyone expected. Their world has offered its whisper. You have listened with care. The wind passes over the mound, smoothing the surface grain by grain. It carries no warning, only the calm breath of an old landscape returning to stillness. Beneath it, the unopened door remains where it has rested through countless nights, neither denying the mystery nor surrendering it. Perhaps knowledge is most beautiful at the threshold. Perhaps the oldest wisdom is not an answer, but the quiet humility of standing near what cannot yet be known. And perhaps, as your thoughts grow lighter and the ancient city disappears beneath the night, The story is not yet complete. Sleep now beneath the patient stars.